expressed in the following are those of its participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the producers and the Six Talk Podcast Network. Also, the following contains mature material and mild language, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised.
You know, we were planning for this to be a Sunday morning thing. Instead, it turned into a lunch hour thing. How's the new computer, James? Finally got it loaded?
Yeah, no, a lot of updates. Who knows? I probably still have a few bugs to work out and stuff like that. But that's what happens after the old one goes for 8 years and Windows says they're going to stop supporting Windows 10 in October this year.
Well,
so now I'm into the future. I've already dealt with Windows 11 obviously at work. It's just weird how they've now moved to a similar like style, it feels like, to Apple. You know what I mean? Like everything's in the center. It's not like you're not going to the left and all that. You know what I mean? So it's these small little things.
Yeah, I can't. Well, remind me. I'll show you the interface for mine, for my MacBook, sometime. Anyway, it's just James had a little bit of time, and I know it's busy at work for him. So I'm glad we had a little bit of time to chat, and just the two of us, just me and you for an hour or so, and catch up and get his take on certain things. Good to see you. Good to see you, Mr. Alston.
Yeah, no, of course.
A couple of nice things going on over the last little bit, both sarcastically and genuinely speaking. I don't know. This was one of those, okay, I'm going to use the same line you used with me 7 years ago when we came out of Podfade and we started Roundtable. This is one of those days where we just hit the record button and just see what comes out of our mouth. Hopefully none of it will see us get sued for libel.
Don't worry, I'm sure there's bodies out there just watching the internet for people like us.
Oh, sure. Well, or AI bots for that matter.
Oh, even better.
Well. So we just decided to Space Heater chat it up just before the end of the month. We've long met quota. Yes or no? Do we include the Twitch streams as towards quota? Those are long things, by the way, when I do them.
I think they're their own things, right? The video game, the Yakuza journey you've been talking about for many a year.
Yeah, I'm just glad to finally start the next part of that. Look, first of all, my answer to that would be yes, because at least it keeps our presence, right? And then we can do something special, and then we can add these things, add the shows again to its normal thing. So my answer would be yes. And when I look at the I make clips of the highlights of various moments playing the games. And right now they're not uploadable to YouTube. So really our YouTube presence sucks still. But I've been able to add stuff to Instagram and TikTok as well as Twitch throughout all that time, throughout the last month. And I think it's worked out. I'm ecstatic if one highlight reel, if one highlight gets at least 100 views. I'm ecstatic. And I tend to be fairly happy if one broadcast on VOD gets at least 40 views before it has to go. It's taken down in 7 days. Those are very, very small hurdles, very low bars, but we're just really starting this part of the programming for Roundtable. 19 years later. 19 years. Hard to believe it's been that long, though, right?
Yep.
So you have a thought after 19 years, because you've been on this with me the entire time, right? I know we had to get off, or I chose to get off and take everybody off for a chunk of period in the middle of all that. But you have a thought on 19 years of doing this, on and off?
It's hard to probably put into words and stuff like that, because I know you've asked us many times, right, over many different podcasts and stuff like that, and it's probably the same words I've said before is that I just happened to pass on by, and you said, "Hey, do you want to hop on in?" And I hopped on in, and I'm still here.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
didn't
it's
think
just, as you said, it was just like us in the old anime club days, basically sitting back and talking, and we just put it out there on the internet for anyone who wanted to listen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have no clue over the years how many have. I know there. I think in the early days of podcasting, because when we started in 2006, podcasts were very much in their infancy, and we did get a bit of an audience at the time. So, some people did recognize me or recognize my voice more like it in the wild, right? I mean, I still when somebody did actually recognize my voice at a vendor's table at a at a spring con, so basically at Comic Con, right, at the Toronto Con, the equivalent of it now. And I was kind of surprised that somebody would have recognized my voice. The recognition won't be there now. I mean, there's literally millions of podcasts, millions of streams out there, and you do have to scratch and claw a little bit to find your niche, find a bit more of an audience. And I'm on a personal level, I'm more at peace with that, and and I'm okay with that. So, and I've told you in private, James, my own motivation for having done all of this over 19 years, right? Over all these years, with the podcast, and now with these video game streams with the Twitch, there will come a point, I am convinced, that my demise will come through something like Alzheimer's or dementia. So
Oh, God.
I would like to have a record of a lot of this in some form, maybe to jog my memory in my later years.
The good stuff we say, right?
Yeah, the good stuff. To jog my memory in later years, and just have something out there to be remembered by, right? If nothing else, not necessarily to be famous, but something for those who I know to remember me by when the time comes, right? I know that's kind of a depressing thought, but I want to have. But if there, so maybe more lighter. If there were moments I really thought made me laugh, I'd like to see them again. So that's some of it too.
As you said, yeah, lots changed over 19 years. How people edit podcasts, how people probably get their podcasts. Because think about it, people 19 years ago when they were finding us and doing version 1. It isn't like now where they're probably listening to the podcast in the car, or they're listening to it on their phone and stuff like that with the headphones in while they're on public transit or walking around, right? So it's a crazy different world.
It is. Now, as for the stream itself, I'm still trying to understand a lot. We are on StreamYard to do this episode. I'm still trying to understand OBS just a little bit to be able to show web pages a little better. I know there's ways. I have to look it up. It's not as intuitive as something like StreamYard, but of course there's a way, and in the end it's probably still quite simple, but it's still a way that has to be learned in my case. And I'll get to that eventually. I think, I mean, the thing was, maybe this was also part of the hesitancy of doing this. When I said we'd be doing this for 4 years, I wanted it to be perfect, but realized, okay, it won't be. So let me just do something that get to a case where I can at least be comfortable. And that's what the point we got to in the last month or so, since February, and then basically the last month. So let me get to that. Let me figure out a way to multi-stream a little bit. Because the video game streams the live versions are exclusively on Twitch. I will put up the archived version of those onto the YouTube channel at some point, because they are archived. I've kept them, and I do have to put them somewhere before they completely fill up my computer. On the topic of getting new computers, congratulations on yours, by the way, James. I do have to. I am seriously considering another laptop now, just to strictly dedicated to this podcast and the stream, strictly dedicated to Anime Roundtable, because just get a larger capacity computer with good enough capabilities to stream as well. Because maybe I should, it's a separation of work and play. Well, yeah, maybe work. That's probably one way to put it. Work and play, because well, the podcast is a bit of work and play if I end up playing a little bit, right? And this is more fun than anything, and something I really enjoy doing. And then just separate this computer as my regular work stuff, because you know, I am, because on a personal level, you know that I'm doing other things right now while in my own professional purgatory. So anyway, but on that note, and then we'll get down to the actual talking shop and the rest of the show and the rest of the you know, your takes on the rest of what's been going on out there in terms of the anime and video game world, anime, manga, and video game worlds. On that note, just off stream, and I mentioned this a couple days ago, I think on Wednesday or maybe Monday. While coming back from doing some skating, because that's something I've also taken up. I went through Mervish Village with a friend, and stumbled onto a store, and I knew this had existed. I was aware this existed. I just didn't know specifically where. There is an anime shop in Koreatown that opened up back in the fall called Anime Otaku Hobby, and I knew it had existed because I just knew it existed already. But I'll tell you, and I have to kind of go ahead a little bit, and then I'll reel back as to how I know about the store. But I decided to stumble into it on Monday afternoon, and went upstairs because it sits on the third floor. And if you know the Koreatown, like there are two. You can arguably say Toronto has two Koreatowns. One in North York. Sadly, that's where the van incident back in 2018 happened, and we've talked about that before. The other one is the one that's always existed, and that's in more closer to downtown. I guess the annex, you could call it. Between on Bloor Street, between Christie and Bathurst, basically where Mervish Village once, Honest Ed's and Mervish Village once stood. So you go to that area, and so that's where this little store is. And I hobble inside, and I see two figures who I've known for many years, for as long as I've been a fan in this, and that's we're dating back to the mid to late 90s. One of them I hadn't seen in more than 20 years. One of them I hadn't talked to in more than 20 years. That predates this podcast. But if I on the topic of inspirations for this podcast, it was conversations with people like him that inspired this show. So after recognizing each other again after more than 20 years, basically our conversation.
I was going to say, was there a bit of a moment before you guys recognized each other when you heard the voices?
It was more on him because he's older. But I did recognize him, and after 30 seconds, our conversation basically started where it left off more than 20 years ago. Here, let me show you. And I learned that this is a family-run business, and they're helping out family. These two guys. So great. As I said, I would say it's a nice little store. Let's just quickly show that right now. A little store called Anime Otaku Hobby on Bloor Street in Toronto. There's the website. In terms of what it has, I guess it's what you normally see in stores like this these days. So models and
there's
cards.
Pokemon cards, Magic cards, but yeah, the figures and stuff like that. I know some others definitely still have some manga and stuff like that. The Blu-rays and DVDs, unfortunately, they've pretty much went online only, it feels like, doesn't it? It's like it doesn't sell in the stores like it used to.
Yeah, it's almost become a bit on the passé side. But
it's about the merchandise, as we know, and that's a key thing.
And it's kind of back to the future, right? So this is what it looks like. And this is where they, this is how it looks to them now. And in one sense, it's not too different in terms of what you have. But the one thing that impressed me about this place is its social space. So it's a pretty large space they have for their store. the number of products is probably run of the what you normally see in a lot of other places. And they always tell me about the difficulty of trying to get stock right now, which isn't and if you keep up with trying to get with stores and trying to get Pokemon cards and to a lesser degree model kits like Gundams, you probably know the whole bit about trying to get stuff right now. It isn't the easiest thing. And so they've told me their stories about trying to get stock. And I'm pretty sure, and I know if Terry and Anthony, if the Comic Den brothers were still in business, we'd have a similar conversation with them too about this type of stuff, right? So there's
it's a different world, as we know, especially with how Diamond has ended up in the ditch recently and stuff like that. So a lot of those independent comic shops have had to look elsewhere for distribution and other things, right? So it'd definitely be a crazy different world compared to when they were operating.
Yeah, but this is it. But one thing that struck me about this place, and I visited it when it was almost empty, but I know the potential for this place could get really lively, and I know they've had a number of social events in it. There's a large space in it. You can have events in there. There's a large potential like quasi event space or quasi gathering.
I know a lot of with the cards and stuff like that, whether it's the anime cards we just saw there, with the One Thing Pokemon cards or even Magic and all that. Some of those places have those social aspects where they have different events, maybe once a week to either play or to trade, you know what I mean? So you can trade different cards and things like that. So there's a lot of that. And then it kind of helps bring different people in, right? And so that definitely helps.
And
and you can't do that with figures, right? So the card games definitely help and stuff like that.
But they have those two. They have the potential to do that. And I know maybe that could be the mentality there once in a while, but it has the largest such space I've seen yet. Mind you, I haven't been around enough to know how this goes, but that was a pretty good space. It was great to touch base with these two brothers. I will tell you, if you are into the history of fandom, especially in Toronto, you will get a lesson of it going here and possibly talking with those guys, because I love to say I've seen a lot. I can safely say these guys have seen 10 times more, or X times more than I have over the years, right? So in many ways, my conversations with people like these guys influenced a lot of the way I'm talking to many of you now, right? So trust me, James, I know you knowingly haven't met either of these brothers, or maybe you've probably seen at least one of them in passing, but you probably didn't know who they were. I would tell you right now, you would have a fun conversation with them. You would have an interesting conversation with them. That's how much I enjoyed those chats with them over the years, and it's kind of cool. Maybe a chance to start those conversations again. So Anime Otaku Hobby sits, I forgot, I'll give the exact address here. No, I'm not being paid by them, but Anime Otaku Hobby, 627 Bloor Street West, 3rd floor in downtown Toronto. Okay.
Well, at least it's nice to see there are some other stores that are still trying to go at it and stuff like that. We've seen it with different video game stores, but also with the stores with the hobby type stores in anime and comics and stuff like that. Because remember 20 years ago in like the DVD bubble and stuff like that, you could go downtown Toronto and just walk through the downtown and go to those different places on Yonge Street, whether it's Harry Tarantula, 1 Million Comics, then head to Chinatown to see Anime Extreme, head to Mervis Village then because it was behind Honest Ed's for beguiling and stuff like that. And there's not as much left anymore and stuff like that. It's like there are still things, as you said, the one we just mentioned. There's still Navito World, which is on Danforth and stuff like that. And beguiling still going along on College Street near Spadina and stuff like that.
Anime Extreme moved a few doors down. Yeah.
And then I know obviously Harry Tarantula is still in business, but they had to move way up Yonge Street closer to 401 and Yonge Street. And they've changed their business dramatically, as probably Kevin has said and stuff like that. Like they still have some of their old stock, I guess, left that they couldn't sell of anime and manga, but it's mostly moved to kind of similar to what we've seen with the story you just talked about and stuff like that, with the cards and even the figures and other things in the nerdom.
So there's just something worth mentioning. Okay, do you want to just quickly, do you have a thought on the stream for the first month of the video game stream? Since I haven't had too many chances to talk to you about, or talk to any of the others about feedback on the stream.
As I told you, I have to watch more of the recent ones and stuff like that because my mind's been a blur this month and probably next month. So just like the back of just as my background is a blur, it's like my mind's probably been a blur.
That's good.
But no, you gotta start somewhere, right, Mike? So it'll work itself out, and it takes a long while and stuff like that. And you never know what's gonna make that viewer count spike, right? Or you never know what the algorithm's gonna do.
Yeah,
and at least you don't have to worry about the adpocalypse that all the other streamers are worried about, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on Twitch and stuff like that.
Okay, adpocalypse. Okay, maybe I'm not familiar with it because I've never had to depend on it. When you say that, like, what's the best way to summarize it in 5 minutes or less?
Well, what you're looking at is the bigger streamers and stuff like that. Probably one of them makes a comment or does something off color or whatever, and then basically what happens is, remember, the people that are going to Twitch, YouTube, or whatever, these advertisers, they don't get to choose where the ads go and stuff like that. It's like, okay, you're selling us ad space. We're putting these ads on there and stuff like that, however many seconds or whatever, and they're just going out there, and they could appear on, well, obviously you can set in your settings, right? What ads you want to see and things like that. And depending on if you're paying and stuff like that, maybe you're ad free in that. But for the ones like myself that are just going on there, it's like whatever. I don't even do anything to my settings. Whatever ads are meant for our region, they just get sent to me and stuff like that. And these are big companies and stuff like that, and they have a brand image and stuff like that. We've talked about that many times before. And say one of those big streamers decides to go off and do something crazy or talk about something crazy, whether it's one side, the other side, I don't know, maybe it's up or down. They the advertisers are going to be like, wait a sec, what's going on with your platform? It's like, we don't associate with that type of stuff. We're going to pull our ads and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And they're going to take their money somewhere else. And we've seen that, well, Twitch, I think, well, obviously YouTube has had it with many different creators over the years, and they've gone through ebbs and flows, right? And Twitch is probably, it's hard to say whether it's kind of happening now a bit too, and it's happened recently because of Hassan Piker and stuff like that. So he's definitely been an interesting character along with some other people, and Twitch is kind of felt like they've been behind them, and some of the advertisers, because of the world we live in, are kind of like, oh, we don't feel great about this and stuff like that. So they've been feeling a bit of it now too. But it's ebbs and flows, you know what I mean?
Right now, it's probably a few other, a few issues, I guess, so to speak. And I guess the attitude I'm taking is, I'm Mr. Wendell. I'm not dependent on anything in that sense.
Yeah, which is nice. But yeah, it can come from either end, and you never know what event in the world or what thing someone's going to say, and then it's like a bomb goes off, and then the advertisers are like, what's going on? It's like, so some of them start to pull back and stuff like that, and we're talking about those multi-billion-dollar companies across the world that some of the ads that they could probably put anywhere in the world, right? And they don't know where their ad's going to show up. And say it showed up after someone said something quite offensive or something like off color and stuff like that, that would be a worry for them, right?
Yeah, I mean, ads come up automatically. Having watched a few streams, they come up fairly automatically. And I think it's up to also content creators to be able to, vary the frequency by which they happen. Because I was looking on,
and it is on both sides. So I think some of the ads can be controlled by user and by the creator and stuff like that. But and maybe about what ads they could have there and stuff like that. you know, I mean, maybe some of them may be a little more mature and some of them may be for a younger audience. But at the end of the day, for more of the general ads, they're going to get through probably any of them, right? So they're the ones that would
We'll
be
see.
getting the money to Twitch, to YouTube, and stuff like that. And if they start pulling out, and who knows when they're going to come back? Yeah, they might come back, but you don't know how many months or weeks it is going to be before they feel comfortable coming back to your platform.
On the note of ads, okay, and now this is the segue I'm looking for. Maybe a distant one. You have have you kept up with the Fuji TV Masahiro Nakai scandal?
I've heard a bit about it and stuff like that. I've heard that they've had issues with, because obviously, as we know, with Japanese TV, and we see it, well, you don't see it now because they cut those parts out of the streaming of the anime and stuff like that. But remember when we used to BitTorrent and stuff like that, some of them would keep in between like the openings and the endings. It's like, here's our sponsor for our program. So Japanese TV would rely heavily on these sponsors for live action and anime and news programming and stuff like that. And they still do, based on how they run things over there. So it's a big thing that this scandal is kind of the similar thing as you were saying there, that they're just, a lot of them are saying, nah, we're not going to put any money in Fuji. We're going to go to other networks. And there's still some programs that are going to be sponsored and stuff like that, that are big and stuff like that. I forget which ones, but Bandai, I know, is still sponsoring maybe a few of the big ones, but there's still a number of slots, it sounds like, that are just going to be aired without a sponsor. And that'll be interesting to see how that affects them, because they definitely got a very big black mark on them.
So do you think, as I said, if you heard the angle I took on it, was the one that fascinates me is Fuji, out of all the networks, is probably has the biggest one of the bigger international footprints outside of Japan. And I know that statement is just redundant, but.
And some of that, a lot of people think about is, I guess you think about Iron Chef and other things, and then it just kept rolling and rolling. You know what I mean?
Midnight Diner. They are having a bit more of a Netflix presence these days. So, and talk on the topic of other scandals. Terrace House was a Fuji series, and it was one of their bigger ones that appeared on Netflix. And honestly, a scandal took that one down after I forgot her name, and I should remember, because who could forget what happened to her? And and I feel bad about not remembering now, so I'm gonna look that up, because I really have to look that up. Hana Kimura.
Yep.
And how could I forget? And the incident, sadly, I forgot her name, but how could you forget the whole thing? How could you forget period? You know? So,
and that one, went into the streaming. Like this one, it seems it is contained mostly to Japan and to the actual Fuji station terrestrial, and the advertisers there. It's hard to say what's happened to anything they've made in, with partnerships internationally with streaming and stuff like that.
But the other side is, if they don't exist, then what becomes of these deals? And people think this is it's serious enough that it could affect the very existence of Fuji TV or of the company, right?
Because as we know, a lot of the bottom line comes from the domestic market, and at some point, and let's think about it too, like, yes, Fuji is probably the first domino, but as we know with the Japanese entertainment industry, I'm sure there's some other things in the shadows that other networks and other places have maybe similar things that they don't want getting out, and so they better be looking out, right?
Yeah, they probably should try and they probably should put out those fires now while there's still just a simple match or a candle before it hits the rest of any real kindling, right?
Yeah, take a look at the playing field, and maybe take a look outside Japan and see what the best practices are elsewhere in the world. You know what I mean? Because there's probably definitely room for improvement
on the kicking and screaming side. But yeah, there is definitely room for improvement, but kicking and screaming sometimes, that's sort of it. And we've talked at length about how parts of Korea, other parts of Asia seem to be more embracing the international. And Japan has been the most hesitant, even though it had the most potential. Now they're doing this, and now they're playing a little bit more from behind. And I say that in terms of relations to the music industry. I mean,
Yeah,
we had
you
that
you
discussion
guys
earlier.
had you guys had talked about that, and I know you had made mention of it. And I still don't have like the biggest up, but it gave me pause for thought while I was driving to work a few weeks ago, and they were talking about that Rogers Stadium that they're putting up at Downsview and stuff like that.
Which is where
For
the
this,
Blackpink concert
and
will
they're
take
going to
place.
put some big works and stuff like that, like big acts and stuff like that. Like Coldplay is going to be there. I think Oasis is going to be there.
It's being built
Then,
specifically for Oasis, I think so.
but there was another one that caught my attention, and they were talking about it, and it was a K-pop band and stuff like that. I think it was.
Blackpink. It was
Yep, Blackpink.
Blackpink is set
And
for
so
them.
there were a lot of angry people because supposedly they had one show, and with Ticketmaster and all the things, getting tickets and stuff like that. So some people were paying like a lot more, having to go to different seats and that. And then I'm not sure if it was days later or a week later or whatever, they added a second show, and the tickets were less, and people could have sat with each other. So people were, to say the least, very unhappy. So that's what they were talking about. But it made me think about what you were saying with J-pop and what the one producer was saying, and that size of venue, right? Rogers Place, that the K-pop acts can play in, right? In Toronto. And I'm thinking, we've had obviously J-pop acts come to Toronto. They played at Queen Elizabeth Theatre and at some smaller venues, and even at Anime North and stuff like that. But I can't imagine one playing at a venue of the Roger Stadium size. You know what I mean? Or but stage size, like a K-pop band.
Well, the only exception could be One Ok Rock, and Squirrely has made it a point to mention to me they'll be playing at Budweiser stage.
Okay,
when they make their appearance here in Toronto later soon. I don't know. I forgot exactly.
But I guess in a way it's fewer and far between, right? Because we can only name one. But if there's someone out there that thinks they can come and play a bigger venue in Canada, let us know and stuff like that. And that's not to say, like, there are definitely other international acts, even from India, that have really started to come to Canada and play in BC, in the Toronto area and stuff like that, for the expat community and stuff like that, and even other places.
Well, okay, not to hawk my where I used to work, and I haven't hidden it in the past, but a few of those acts have been at the theater at Great Canadian Casino Resort in Toronto at Woodbine Racetrack. So a few of those have been there. That's of course where the ITZY concert took place last year. There are a couple of K-pop acts actually set for GC Toronto as well. So that's maybe worth mentioning. And if you want to let us know, there it is, animeroundtable.com.
Other than that, like I did hear at the end of the last episode, were you guys planning to kidnap Neil at some point this year? It sounds like.
Well, we'll tell you the story later on. If we're able to pull that off, we'll tell the story.
Oh man!
But yeah, I mean, 19 years on, and it's been a few since we've had Neil on. And remember that very first episode, it was just us three chatting around the table, right? So hearing from him, yeah, and I'll state it again. Neil admits that he doesn't keep up as much with the Asian pops part, but he is still very much a geek, and he is always full of opinions. So
there's always going to be something to talk about, right? We won't be amiss for a topic.
No, and regardless of how off topic it gets from the anime side of it, I think it would still be interesting regardless. So there's there's a thought for you right there. How long? We've already talked for 35 minutes. How long do you have today? I got a little.
I knew it's probably going to be a long one, because especially after we get to the final part.
Well, I mean, we talked for so like when to the listeners out there, whoever's to those of you who will be listening to this, and I know watching right now, I know there's a couple. James and I, when we chat, we can end up chatting for hours. The only thing that's missing from our conversations is a recorder. So we're recording this, for my deathbed. So
don't worry. It's like by the time we finish this one, you're probably gonna need to listen this if you're doing a drive from Toronto to Vancouver or something. I don't know.
At least Niagara Falls
or Windsor.
Or Windsor, yeah, that's probably a better analogy, because Niagara Falls is roughly an hour and a half, I think now. Windsor is probably a better apt way to put it. Anything else we want to go with that? You didn't see the Gundam movie or Colors Within, did you?
No, I did not see those and stuff like that. I haven't seen much of movies and stuff like that. I know you guys were talking about the Oscars as well and stuff like that, but didn't really watch the Oscar. I haven't watched many movies, and some of it is just how they've changed since COVID and stuff like that. It doesn't feel in my mind like I can just go walk up, get a seat, and walk into the theater and stuff like that. For some of those, yeah, you could, but you're still choosing your seat and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I know why they went that model and things like that, but it definitely. And the other thing that feels is how many people, like actual people that they have, where instead of going to the panels, you know what I mean? The self-serve to get your tickets if you just want to go and walk up, right? Mm-hmm. There's not as many of what they used to of just the cashiers and stuff like that. They probably might have one if you're lucky and stuff like that.
Well, in the movie theaters?
But yeah, and with the cost of the movies and stuff like that, since I don't go that often, it's like, how much is it worth it for me to basically go there and stuff like that? And the other thing for some people is they probably already have the setup, like technology's improved so much that they have a good enough setup in their own mind that they're like, you know what, I'm just going to wait. And maybe either it used to be you might buy the DVD and Blu-ray, but now it's probably they're renting it from the Apple store or Google store or something like that to watch it that way instead of the Blockbuster and Rogers rental.
Back in the day. Colors Within, I think, is already now on digital download. So
yeah, it's a lot quicker for those digital downloads and stuff like that, whether you want to rent it or you want to quote unquote own it, so to speak, which means that
until the technology
they decide, right? You don't get to have it.
Yeah.
Which one day may happen. You never know.
But pay full price anyway, right?
And that happens in the video game sphere now and stuff like that. It's like
people are
we want to. It used to be, it's like, oh, we can just give you a bit of a discount. Now it's like, no, we have to keep it the same price. And it's like, but there's a difference. Like you had to store things, you had to like send them through. You know what I mean? Send it through the process compared to the digital and all this other stuff. It's like, I know some people don't see the value, but I'm like, there's less value in that digital version than having that physical version that they actually had to make the product and me physically having it in my hands to put into the device. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, I guess my defense of the digital part, and because I actually respect this argument, it's just part convenience, part laziness for me, right? I just can't look around as much anymore. So yeah, the Like a Dragon games that are actually sitting in a PlayStation account virtually, not on an actual disc.
The good news
may or may not be a bad thing.
The good news is at least they carried over. You know what I mean? So it's luckily they started that thing with reviving Yakuza in PlayStation 4, because remember PlayStation 5, yeah, it's backwards compatible, but just for PlayStation 4.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and that's for digital and physical. So
yeah, and then I can play my PS4 games now on 5, and maybe that's a thing, and maybe that a certain type of backwards compatibility will be a thing for a little while. Okay, yes or no? Because this came up in the stream from one of our new from one of the new followers from Friday night, and I want to get your take on this.
Mm-hmm.
Did the Yakuza series save Sega?
No, I'd say no. That's just hogwash. Like in realistic terms, like they tried. And remember that first Yakuza game, they actually had Mark Hamill, they westernized, like they really wanted to make it as big as they could and stuff like that. It just did not work out. What really saved the Yakuza series is Sega buying Atlas. So Sega buying Atlas is what saved the Yakuza series, because remember,
And
once they
when
bought
you say
Atlas and stuff like that, they were doing the different Atlas games and things like that. But then the localizers and all the people that worked on the Atlas stuff, they then took over Yakuza and those type of games and just kind of got the ball rolling and stuff like that. And they're the ones that built that fan base. You know what I mean? So
the
they saved the Sega, they saved it for Sega and stuff like that. Like I think like Atlas has been a boon for Sega and stuff like that.
so it's not Yakuza in and of itself, but what another acquisition did for it, for Yakuza,
Hmm.
and in turn Sega throughout the rest of the world.
Yeah, like they
That's
got
the impression I'm
very
getting.
lucky, because remember, Atlas was part of Index and stuff like that, and they had their whole big scandal with the accounting scandal with that head honcho and stuff like that. So he was forced. He's like, okay, we have to get rid of this and stuff like that, because it blew up very badly. But no one knew where at like Atlas, like they were like, we don't know where we're gonna. And anyone could have picked them up, but luckily Sega picked them up and was able to bring them into the fold. And then they were able to, like, best practices of both work together perfectly and stuff like that, even in the West and stuff like that. So they had those games and stuff like that for 3DS and all those other things. But then once they got into the bigger games, there was kind of help from the Sega, but it also helped on the localization end for other games that Sega wasn't doing as often, because they were more focused on the Sonic and the other stuff, which they were good at. But Atlas is like, hey, we've done Japanese RPGs, Japanese style games and stuff like that. And they were able to bring Yakuza up and stuff like that, and bring it to the consciousness of people that, you know what I mean, that had followed Atlas for many years or over a decade. You know what I mean?
Okay, fair
And
enough.
they knew that there was a quality behind it. You know what I mean? Because it was the Atlas people. And even though Atlas isn't on the box, it's Sega obviously is on the box. It's like knowing that there is that quality and stuff like that, that they're, you know what I mean, commingling and stuff like that. It's not like they're separate parts of the same company. It was great to see, and to help give life to Yakuza outside of Japan was fantastic to see, and to go back to those older games and even redo them and stuff like that.
So yeah, okay. So the answer to your question is okay, maybe, but there's a little bit like Yakuza, not in and of itself, just something, but another player that probably really did it with Yakuza, among other things.
Because
Right.
remember, they definitely tried, because you had it English dubbed and all that with the first one, and then I think it was the second one, they didn't even dub or do anything. They just released it as Japanese subtitle and stuff like that, and it didn't feel like they could make any headway. And it wasn't until it feels like PS4 and Yakuza 0 and stuff like that where they found that headway, and that was Atlas helping them out from there. And then the ball just really got rolling, and just you started seeing all these Yakuza games just come out one after the other. It's like, where were all these games? It's like, well, because some of them were from before and stuff like that.
Basically, the Dragon Engine era. Sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but I thought I'd lay that thought because somebody one of the viewers in the stream made me think about that. Brought
And
up that
some of
question.
it you can think of too is last year with Metaphor Phantasmo. Remember, that was like their biggest game. It was like a celebration of Atlas. I'm trying to think, was it 1, 2, 3, like 40 years, or it was some ridiculous number, but they've been around since the late 80s. So, but it was a celebration of Atlas for that game, and it got a nomination from the Game Awards and from other award shows and stuff like that. And you could see like everything coming together for an Atlas RPG in that, and the quality that between Sega and Atlas coming together. It's like really been a marriage made in heaven, and it's helped both parties for getting
Yeah,
those
I
games
see that.
out, for getting Yakuza out on the Sega side and stuff like that. And then Sega's still plugging along with Sonic on the other end and stuff like that. Whether people like the games or not, whether it's in 3D or 2D.
Well,
But the
yeah,
movies have been doing all right. So
yeah. The movie, well, yeah, good. Better. I'd say better than Mario, but then again, it's maybe more about frequency than anything right now, and recency for that matter. Just going to acknowledge a couple people who have dropped in watching the stream so far, and they've been regulars on that stream, on the video game stream. Hero Harmony, Gabby the Rabbit, just saying thank you for just popping in for a little bit. Okay. 45 minutes and we haven't even gotten to what we wanted to on the agenda. This is so us. We're so on point already, James. Do you want to start getting to what we the pre-show plan?
Sure, a bit of it. Did you want to talk about a bit of anime and stuff like that before we get back into video games?
Yeah, let's. Is
that going to torpedo the viewer count?
What can you do? What can you do, right? I mean, this is in the end the anime roundtable, so maybe it's okay to go there. Okay, so I know. Which one do you want to go with? Do you want to go with Animigo, or do you want to talk Canadian?
Why don't we do Anime Ego? I know it's old, but we can talk a quick bit about it. Like they had done last month in basically February, one of their live streams and stuff like that. And there had been some announcements. Like I think the big one for a lot of people was the Blackjack complete OVA series and stuff like that. So that's now been rescued, and we'll finally get those 2 episodes after Osamu Dazeki's death, basically, as well, and stuff like that. Because Central Park Media originally released the first 10, and like these are like hour-long OVAs, and like it's probably the best representation of Blackjack in anime and stuff like that. It looks fantastic, like the animation, the music, and everything. You just sit back and you're like, oh my goodness, it's fantastic. So it's great Justin Vegas was able to get that for Anime Ego. I know that the other one they had announced was obviously the older owners, Robert and Woodhead and his wife Natsumi, had been doing Kickstarters, right? And so supposedly their final Kickstarter was going to be Vampire Princess Mew, right? And that's the OVAs, which they had originally had. But I guess they said they couldn't find enough things to make the Kickstarter worth it. You know what I mean? Like extras or things that would make people want to back it. So they just said to Justin, you know what? Why don't you just have it? And you can just, you know what I mean? Send it out into the world. So he said that'll come out later this year on Blu-ray, as well as the Vampire Princess Mew OVAs and stuff like that on Blu-ray for the first time. And those ones were from the late 80s, I think. So
Nobody's Remy, as I know, talked about.
Yeah, I think Justin had done that with Imagination, and that was like DVDs pressed on demand and stuff like that. So this will be a very good thing on Blu-ray for Nobody's Boy Remy, and that one's coming out in May. And then I didn't even know it, and they had said the same thing, is they're putting 3D glasses into that release, because supposedly it's one of the only series that and it's probably more the first part of the series, it probably has some of it in the last part, but not as much, but that they have, I guess, how they animate it, that you just have regular 3D glasses on. You know what I mean? That you had
I kind of explained it a little bit, or at least my own observation about it over the years. And yeah, I didn't know that technology could have existed that far back. But 2 series that sort of pop to my head right now when we talk about this, and I think they use the same technology. There was an animated version. There was an animated take on what would Yogi Bear be like as a teenager, called Yo Yogi. That was a Saturday morning cartoon, I think in the late 80s or early 90s, right? And you had me curious, and now I'm not totally sure, so I'm gonna look it up.
Wow. But yeah, I'm not sure I'm gonna see it with the glasses on. I might try for one episode, but all I know is Boys Remy, like thinking that you could watch some of that in 3D is probably painful to think, because it is probably just like Grave of the Fireflies, one of the most sad and depressing series you'll ever watch. And it's like, just as soon as you think, and they said on the stream too, just as soon as you think something good is happening for Remy and stuff like that, this nice French boy trying to find his mother and stuff like that, it's like, oh, everything's looking great, and then the narrator comes in and says, well, that's great, but guess what happens now? And then it's like, oh boy, here it goes again. We're going back down the hill.
Yeah, the other series I was thinking was Boxmaster. So those two series were in the early 90s. And Nobody's Boy Rami. And really, those sequences were actually limited. So they weren't for entire episodes. So you had sequences in these episodes that would probably make the 3D worth trying, if not great, necessarily. So those are the only three shows I can think of that would have used that technology.
I think they said they used it on a Super Bowl in the 1980s. Justin had said similar technology and stuff like that for a halftime show. I think it was like 1989 or 1988, I think, and around there. And it was like Elvis impersonators. So it was just wacky to think that. And that's probably online somewhere, but probably crazy to think of. But the other thing I know they did have quickly, the two other things was Romeo's Blue Skies is going to come to Blu-ray in June. And that's important because I think that's the first physical release, like in North America, of World Masterpiece Theater anime. You know what I mean? And that's a newer one. So that'll be interesting to see come out and stuff like that and see how that fares.
And we'll refer to one other title, but indirectly in just a bit.
And it ties in. And then I guess the last thing is they had talked about, so Justin Savakis had been doing...
and then Full Moon, but that's another thing.
Yep. Yeah, they had announced that before. I know we talked about, but yeah, it got a release day. It's going to come in the summer and stuff like that. And they're going to do that in 2 sets. And they didn't confirm exactly, but they said they might have been able to find the rest of the dub for Full Moon, stuff like that. So that was done by Ocean in Calgary, of course. So it was the Calgary studio at Blue Water Studios did that. But basically Visit originally released, I can't remember, it's like 7 or 8 volumes, so it was kind of half the series, and that had sub and dub. But there was a question whether they dubbed the rest of the series, the next half of it. So hopefully the first part will be that part that's been released, and then that second part we're going to see maybe they found the dub. If they did, that's a great find for them. But they've been known to do that with Discotheque and other places.
Yeah, and then the other one,
Media OCD.
And from our standpoint, this is the documentaries, the talk for us, right?
Yeah. So I know, Justin Savakis, I know on his Twitter, had talked about producing a documentary for anime like figures in North America, you know what I mean, and the English speaking world from, like, you know what I mean, the 90s and the DVD bubble era and stuff like that. So he had taken like a professional crew and stuff like that to do these interviews with different figures and stuff like that. He even went to the UK and stuff like that. We have John O'Donnell right here, that Justin Savakis, and then you're seeing some of the different figures he got. But the one part he said he hasn't gone to Texas, so he hasn't done anything with Funimation alum or ADV Sentai alum and stuff like that. But he's still gotten a lot of footage, and he wanted to make into a documentary and sell it to someone, because there was kind of that space for a bit of time where they had these unique documentaries, whether it was in video games and whatever, that could sell to streaming services and stuff like that. But as he said, it disappeared. So in essence, and as you can see, so you're showing that first part of the documentary.
Yeah.
And so it is on YouTube. That's where they said they're going to put it on the Anime Ego YouTube. And it's a good thing, because as you can see, Nasu, this is the release they just released. And I'm going to watch this week, but they have a little ad for one of their shows. So it's a bit of that, but then they go into the actual interview, and there's a lot they put in, like graphic wise, to like give perspective and things like that we saw in John O'Donnell's interview. But the Nasu one, like, looking at this is an incredible one from Madhouse, like in the early DVD bubble era. And this one was done, I'm just going to look at the thing right now, the back of my copy right now. This was Kitaro Kosaka, and he had done a lot of work with Studio Ghibli and Hayao Miyazaki as the animation director for things like Spirited Away and Wind Rises, and then he did Oku's Inn. So that one was interesting. But that was an aside. But yeah, as you can see, so Justin is right there. And so the first one, it is actually great that John O'Donnell is the first one to do it, because he gave some real perspective about the early 90s and stuff like that, about what the anime industry was about. This one's about 40 minutes, and we'll see what happens with the other episodes going forward and stuff like that. But 40 minutes, anyone can watch and stuff like that on YouTube through Anime Ego. And then what they decided is they're going to see if they can, it costs money to do more interviews, right? So what they decided to do is through the Media OCD website, through Wix, instead of doing a Patreon, it's through their own website where they set up monthly tiers. So if you do $5, you can get extra clips each month, basically that weren't in the YouTube video and stuff like that. So they're going to release another YouTube video this month to the general public, and then any subscribers at the $5 and above basically get an extra video and stuff like that, of stuff that was on the cutting room floor and stuff like that. And so for John O'Donnell here, basically he talked about censorship in the extra video if you were a paid monthly subscriber for Media OCD. And the other tiers was like at $10, they had that, and then they had some blog posts from Justin and others talking about what's going on, and then monthly stream where they just talk about how everything's going in the land of Media OCD. And then I think the one after the $10 US per month tier, they had like a $20 one, which if you want to go that route, that's incredible that you have that amount of support. But they said they are very thankful there. And I think the extra thing on that one was they're going to try to get some of their series on the website, and that basically you would be able to watch any of their series that they put up on their own website, VOD. You know what I mean? So video on demand or streaming.
And hopefully it stays past 7 days.
Yeah, no, I think they probably tried to do that. But yeah, so you probably saw that at the beginning. It's probably good that we have it somewhat muted, but the title that they used for this one was quite interesting, because it's basically John O'Donnell, and he's talking right here about how it's first encounters for North America, you know what I mean, with anime and stuff, and where it got to where he was at 99, and trying to then distribute it to North America, to Canadians and Americans and stuff like that. And he was working for a very big company at the time, as he said, Sony. And obviously they had VHSs and they're doing all that stuff. And he was
originally Betamax there. So
yeah, he talked about Betamax and stuff like that. And so he was talking about, well, can we distribute maybe some of this anime or whatever? Because Carl Masick had done stuff with Robotech and all this other stuff. Like through you guys, it's like you have some things on your side. And basically they were not going to let him do that. But then when he went back, when he was Central Park Media and started this, they're like, okay, we'll let you have some of our stuff now. He's like, well, what changed? Well, he's like, well, we can't have it on our image, but if you're going to fail, then we're fine with you failing and stuff like that. Because basically they saw it as low culture and stuff like that. And it was kind of like with the wood block carvings, remember? Way back in the day and stuff like that, with that first contact with Japan, right? It was considered, low culture. But then everyone was like, oh my God, this is great and stuff like that. So it was kind of that thing. And even that, it took many years to permeate, because we saw how long it took till they got to cool Japan and kind of looked at their pop culture for anime and manga and stuff like that. Because even when we were in that DVD bubble, some of it was seen as low culture and stuff like that, not something they wanted to portray to the world. It was like more the traditional arts and things like that, right?
Right. Well, it's kind of like sushi too.
Mm-hmm.
Street food to high dining, right?
Yep. And then the other thing, so when we talk about that one, is he was talking about it. He's talking about the history in the first phase of anime and US TV, and we've talked about before with censorship and stuff like that. So when he gets to where he's getting some of that stuff and he's trying to sell it to those rental stores, to those distributors, right, in North America, and he had the connections because he was with Sony before and stuff like that. And it's obviously a different time and things like that. But he said, like, some of the people back then, like, thinking of their opinion, basically said, oh, that's just that Japanimation or anime, it's like that's just that porno smut, right? And all this other stuff. And they talk about one of the first releases, Dominion Tank Police, and they had it in the video there, where basically the very first part, it's like you have the cat girls and stuff like that, and they take off their bras, I guess, to kind of entice the people so that they can beat the crap out of them and stuff like that. But yes, they take off their bras, but they still have a shirt and clothing fully on and stuff like that as they're dangling the bra from their hand and stuff like that. And they're like, oh my God, that's so pornographic. That's so terrible and stuff like that compared to what you think you could have seen in other places, even back then or now and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's minor considering what you can easily see on the internet at the stroke of a key, so to speak.
Yeah, but it is interesting. So they had to fight that and like educate these people and say, hey, it's like anime. Yes, we're selling you these cyberpunk, and some of them, yes, had violence and all this other stuff. And manga UK even leaned into it. Like they added swearing into the dubs and stuff like that to lean into it. So yeah, there was a bit of that, but then there was the other where they're trying to say, hey, anime can be more than this, and it took time and stuff like that to develop it over the 90s and the early 2000s. And the DVD bubble definitely kind of burst it through in a way there, just like it did for streaming and things like that. But it made me think too, Mike, since we were talking about the old anime club, how does that make you feel knowing that the turn of the century, you and me were showing porno smut at basically a facility, an educational facility of higher learning to consenting adults?
Looking back on those times, but this is actually an interesting thought. It's okay. How do you like when I ran an anime club? This was the fine line I wondered about, right? This was,
and I think you talked about it with Oldmo, right? About it was interesting. Was it Paul Delaney, the fellow that it was lucky his son was kind of interested, so he had an idea. But imagine you're talking to someone who doesn't have an idea, and you were saying you and Oldmo trying to say, hey, this is a worthwhile thing and club for people to gather in our community about, right?
Mm-hmm. And I always say, and this is a very local thought, a very Toronto University thought. Old and Mohammed Abdul Hadi has appeared early in version 2. He was a key guy in keeping an anime club at York University, and then that club recently celebrated its 28th anniversary. So he was instrumental, but I always said it took he had to work a room, but it took people on the other end of the people he was trying to work, and we were lucky in that sense. Yes. And I'll quickly preface this, and this is sort of an article I wrote as a love letter to the club recently to remind them of that past, because many of its current members who are there now, who are in their early 20s, late teens, don't know this story. So they asked me to tell this story a little bit to them. Paul Delaney is a professor of astronomy, and he's a retired professor of astronomy at York University. Let me pull up a picture of him. But we need at the time, people like him were a godsend in many ways, right? I'll show a picture. Let me just quickly show a picture of him according to Wikipedia, or at least when I Googled him just briefly. That's him right there. He is presently, according to this, still the director of the York University Observatory. And yeah, he had family who was into anime. So he gave us a chance. He gave anime a chance at York University. And, it was people like him who kind of understood, at least respected where the long term could be when it came to this stuff. So he didn't know it. He probably wouldn't have the greatest idea himself. He just knows there's more to it. And I think he saw it through the eyes of his kids, his son specifically, who was a member of that club and was a student at York University in later years. Mm-hmm. So we were grateful to him. And in many respects, a lot of what we're seeing now, a lot of what we do now, I can trace Paul Delaney a big role in that, because otherwise we would have given up on it, and none of this probably would be happening. At least not the anime roundtable, right? So I thought, yeah, let's acknowledge him just for a second there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but no, it was good, like, to get over those hurdles. But as we say, time is like a pendulum, right? It swings back and forth, and it's funny because I was looking at social media, and it's like, obviously, even though I'm not on social media, you can see a certain pulse and stuff like that. And as we said, there was an uptick in video games and anime and stuff like that with the pandemic and stuff like that, and different newer fans and people that were looking at different things in anime. And it sounds like it's interesting that some of them have explored other series and stuff like that, and that's great. But then there are other things that, you know, how we said Portos, but some of them seem to have that feeling once they go further away from the shonen series, you know what I mean, the popular series. And some of them are series that you're just scratching your head. It's like there was a discussion over Haruhi Suzumiya and stuff like that, I think a few months ago. And then it's interesting to see what they would think of something like Kawikaze or Strawberry Marshmallow or stuff like that, or just some normal slice of life series that have younger characters, you know what I mean? There's nothing offensive. It's just them doing normal things, you know what I mean? It's just
Koikaze, I'm not sure, but
yeah. Well, I'd love to see what their thoughts are, because there's nothing really offensive in that series and stuff like that. It's just it's definitely something that'll make you think and stuff like that, because of what the content
like
is.
there's a lot of taboo, but
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, that was a Genyon series that was subbed and dubbed, and Genyon USA basically was on the committee, so that's why it got dubbed. And it had some actors that are still very much active, like Patrick Seitz did, and Stephanie Say were basically the two main leads and stuff like that. Michelle Ruff was one of the friends of the main character that is kind of like the substitute for us, the audience, because at one point she's like, what the heck is going on with you? Like, what are you bleeping doing?
Stephanie Say, I will say this about her. Stephanie Say, she signed my copy of the DVD, and she said in it, I remember, and I remember this so distinctly. She wrote in it, best series ever.
And I can see that. I can see that because I think I had talked, because Patrick Seitz and Stephanie Say, I think they were at Anime North one year, and I can't remember what they were promoting.
That's where I got it. They were promoting.
I talked to both of them there, and
yeah, that's what they were promoting.
Yeah, I talked to both of them, and I think I talked to them about what was it, that series, and they had talked to other interviews and that. So it was that one was done by now I forget who did it, but it was one of the ones that Genyon usually went to. But that series, basically the producers of the dub and all that, and the director, like, they all got together and they talked to the actors, and they knew what they were getting into with this series, and they knew that the content was adult and stuff like that, but it wasn't offensive and stuff like that. And they definitely took it on and stuff like that. And so, and these one are actors voice actors that are still going on, and probably people that are newer to anime would recognize. So you'd think it's like, well, hey, if these other people are going to these different series, it's like they aren't all complete garbage and stuff like that. It's like we said, remember the one Anime North, I think it was the first one when we were at the Doubletree Delta, where it was the Yaoi room, remember, was in the New York room where we're going to be this year. And that, yes, they had a thing where they were just checking ID to make sure people were 18 plus. But there were some people that went in there and said, okay, this is very different, not for me, and walked down to a little different and stuff like that. But I don't think they said, well, this is the worst thing on earth and we need to get rid of it.
I love telling that story. This story I always love to tell, because I was one night standing outside of the room while waiting to do our show in another room nearby. I saw three friends walk out, and they were just laughing. They were just joking. No, maybe not for me. No, but they weren't upset or anything. They just found it more, amusing and funny than anything else.
Like and I'm sure that it's like, it was funny because I think I'd happen to give $10 a month to Media OCD, so I saw their last little stream and stuff like that, and I think they'd send and other ones like Justin and stuff like that, where they were. It wasn't like they were talking directly to this, but they were saying, yeah, there is more fans and stuff like that. Yes, some of them like. And it's great if they want to stay in their lane and watch the show and stuff. That's great because hopefully those creators are able to go and create other things they may want to create, right? But don't negate everything else. And if you want to dip your toe and see what else there is out there, just give it a fair shake and stuff like that. If it's not for you, it's not for you, and you can go elsewhere and stuff like that. But as he said, it definitely helps that there's still enough people out there on the other end, that aren't saying it's garbage. That it's like, well, this is different, but I'm intrigued to see it. I'm intrigued to see where this medium had come from before, in decades before, kind of like when we started like 20 years ago, or 25 years ago, where even then, like, we were watching stuff from the 90s and 80s and it was all new to us and stuff like that. And it's harder now because of streaming, because it's not like it's all new to us. It's like, oh, that's old or something like that, and you hear that too. But there's still hopefully enough people out there that the pendulum, even though it swings back and forth, it kind of sticks to the mill to a degree over time.
You hope. But there's that. Anime Business is on the Animigo website right now, and the Media OCD website. It's on there.
It is, if you are subscribed to them, like their Patreon type thing on their site, then you can get the extra content on their site. But go to their YouTube page for Anime Ego, and if you go to the YouTube page Anime Ego, you'll see it in the podcast and you'll see it in the videos. And there's only one episode with part 1 with John O'Donnell, and then I think Robert Napton is going to be the one they're doing this month, and I think Justin said that'll come by the end of March.
Okay, and we're checking out there.
But we were talking about all of what they thought anime was, right? And then we're going to talk about a series that is very wholesome and very un-anime-like, huh?
Yeah, it's actually more Canadian.
Or is it very Canadian?
I won't really say Canadian thing. Okay, well, I wanted to get your take. We wanted to talk a little bit of Anna Green Gables for a little while, since we knew of the existence of the newest series of Anne Shirley premiering within the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wasn't aware of a pickup until you told me. Crunchyroll has picked up Anne Shirley. So
yeah, and so that was this week. They had announced that, because all of them are starting to announce their shows for the spring season, which starts beginning of April. Mm-hmm. But we had talked about Masterpiece Theater and how that not many have gotten outside Japan, right? Some have, but through terrestrial TV and stuff like that. But Anna Green Gables has been on Masterpiece Theater. It has been in live action many countries across the world, especially with us here in Canada on CBC. So it was interesting to see Crunchyroll, as you just played it there, pick up Anne Shirley, because you would think there would be other people that said, you know what, this would be something we can show on Disney Plus, or this can be something we can show on Netflix for a general audience and stuff like that. So it's kind of different compared to the hardcore fan Crunchyroll would go after. And the other key thing that they had in there, so they in parentheses have if it has a dub and stuff like that. So not only is it going to have English sub and the other languages, it's supposedly one of the dubs they're going to have is an English dub for Anna Green Gables for this anime adaptation, the new one they're doing, which is very interesting to see compared to other series that didn't get a dub, because it's interesting to see how they're going to market it to people or how it's going to perform. It's going to be an interesting one to see.
Yeah,
and it's an NHK series, so
there's a lot of layers we can take to this, right? There is a lot of little layers we certainly could take. I'm just rewinding the little some of the bits so we can just show the quick teaser, right? There it is right there. Anne Shirley will premiere in Japan on NHK Education. That's what the E stands for. NHK Education on April 5th. we were talking about we've had different types of conversations with different people about the impact both on Canada and Japan here. Where do I start that? Where do I go first of all? We thought this would have been an interesting take for CBC to want to do. And for reference, Netflix was a co-producer of the last attempt CBC made to do Anna Green Gables, Anne with an E. Remember that about 6-7 years ago? That series that only lasted one season or 1 or 2 seasons. I think 1 season. It was canceled pretty quickly. But that was the last. CBC had that last attempt. And then one would have thought maybe would they have taken a chance on this? So would they have tried to get this? And it's a public broadcaster, much like NHK was or is. So you would have thought they would have had an inside track to possibly get the rights to do this, right? It certainly would have fit the MO, but Crunchyroll, I guess, places.
Yeah, no. It's so maybe they're trying to expand their horizons, as we like to say, or it was a package deal, or who knows. But it's interesting. We'll see how they do with it. But they must have some good feeling about if they're going to do a dub with it, and that's if they produce the dub. So once we finally see the dub, probably in April, it'll be interesting to see who's voicing and stuff like that. Because if we're seeing the Texas voices and stuff like that, it could be a likely scenario that it's Crunchyroll basically dubbing it themselves in-house in around Dallas and stuff like that, maybe with some voices from outside Dallas that they can bring in or do remotely and stuff like that. But if it's voices that are more either California based or maybe even per se ocean based in Vancouver, then maybe whoever the licensor, I would assume it's NHK, maybe they had a hand saying, we really want to get this out there to people and we're willing to do a bit to get a dub there to help you guys out and stuff like that. And we've seen that from time to time.
Well, I mean, and obviously one other group that's probably interested in seeing the success, who has an interest in seeing how this does, is Prince Edward Island itself, right?
Yeah.
And well, let me just let that run for a couple seconds. So, I was alerted about that, and there is some interest in seeing how this does in PEI because tourism.
I love how they're doing that. That one thing from the image was basically from them going in the winter, and you're thinking to yourself, who's going to Prince Edward Island to see Anna Green Gables in the winter? And I know she's probably based in PEI, but I know a lot of them definitely come in that spring, fall, and summer tourist season and stuff like that, because I've been to Green Gables and stuff like that. And for decades, they've had, yes, the French and English, but they also have Japanese there because it's been a special part of Japan and stuff like that. And some of them have made the trip over to PEI and stuff like that, which is incredible to think, because think of how you even get to Prince Edward Island from Japan. It's kind of like the creator of Vinland Saga. He came to Toronto first, and then from Toronto went to probably PEI and stuff like that.
Well, he went to the Atlantic to go to Newfoundland.
Yep.
So
well, no, he didn't go to. They actually did not go. They just went to Prince Edward Island. They did not go to Newfoundland, unfortunately. Even though that would have made sense for the Vikings and all that part, because that's Lanso Meadows would have been a good spot for him. But the reason they went to PEI is a part of the story. They go to Prince Edward Island and stuff like that. So that's why.
There's some of this, right?
And maybe he had some of that because of the influence of Anne Shirley and Anna Green Gables, as we know, that impact.
Well, part of this, and it gets a little, and we can go on and on about this one. This could be another episode, but we're already more than an hour in. But it had me thinking a little bit more about the history of Anna Green Gables in Japan. And I know we've harped on it before, and we're likely to harp on it yet again in a future episode. But Anna Green Gables does have a very long history and its mainstream appeal may predate that of its mainstream appeal in Canada itself, because it was translated into Japanese around the war, just in the war years, and came out in the immediate post-war years. And it became part of the regular Japanese curriculum. So that's why, and that played a big role in some of the impact, some of the Japanese impact. There's a nice little story about, and in recent years, tremendous. And in recent years, the translator has kind of come back into focus. A woman by the name of Hanako Muraoka. She was the one who translated Anne of Green Gables into Japanese, and her story has been told in recent years, both in the form of a drama, which was based off of a biography made by her granddaughter. So, and let me just quickly call that up. There it is. There's a copy of it right there, because that was recently, that was within the last couple of years, translated into English, Anne's Cradle. So this is the biography of the translator of Anne of Green Gables. And and I learned a little bit more about the history through other friends, through and I hawked on the Friday stream about visiting about the Momiji Anime Festival or anime market that had been going on there for much of the weekend. Small admission, but a lot of the people who live there are Japanese seniors, and I know I know a handful of them have copies of the Japanese translation, and which they would have had in their younger years. So there's my yes or no. Yes or no. Anne of Green Gables was mainstream in Japan before Anne of Green Gables was mainstream in Canada, because, as I said, this was a thing in like around the time it came out in the 50s and 60s. The translation came out in the early 50s there. I don't think Anne of Green Gables came into the public eye really in Canada until the mid 80s movie that CBC did. So there's this argument. But what do you think? Like, do you think that's a yes or no? Or
I think there definitely could be a yes. It's just we never really thought about it, right? Because it was these things with literature, with music, with video games, with film and TV and all this thing. Sometimes you never know where you're going to find success, right? Or where that first taste of success is going to happen, because sometimes it's not in the home country, or it's not as big. It somehow gets bigger elsewhere, and then it kind of spreads in different ways, right?
But there's Eri Marioka, the granddaughter of Hanako. And it's an interesting story, because she kind of rediscovers her grandmother, because she never really knew her. She passed away just not too long after she was born. Her grandmother passed away a few months after she was born. So she never really got a chance to know her grandmother. She kind of learned, in making this biography, came to terms about her and her legacy. But that's the fascination. And you'll read a little bit more about, and digging around a little bit more, I start to understand some of the success of Anne of Green Gables. And in many ways, Hanako kind of started to catch a wave in many respects with her translation, because it started to appeal. It was like the first, I wouldn't say first real salvo, but it was one of the earlier salvos in terms of what would become of the shoujo genre in many ways, right? Like, she kind of caught on to the up and coming shoujo appeal that was starting to make itself known at that point. So, and as I said, it did enough to find itself in the regular curriculum in Japanese in Japanese schools, and that's why people are really looking. As I said, PEI really is hoping for its success. I'm sure they'd have nothing against seeing this on CBC. But it's something.
The question is, where would you put it on CBC? Because remember, it's an animated program, and so the question is, where would you put an animated program on CBC and stuff like that? Because it'd be hard to get onto primetime. As I said, the thing that would work in its favor, I think, was they would put it on GEM, which is their streaming service for CBC.
But you did bring up
that probably makes the most sense. And if they were to put it on TV, they would probably need it dubbed, as we know, and stuff like that. So,
and we wouldn't. But then that could lead to a few other issues. We kind of talked about that.
The problem is, if you just want to put it on Gem on streaming, it then comes into the issue of Crunchyroll, right? Because they kind of want it on their platform and stuff like that. And we've seen that with series. I know, for example, G Kids licensing certain series. Was it Dadadon or whatever? And I think it's like Witch Time is another one that's coming up where G Kids is licensed it, they're dubbing and all that stuff, but it's on multiple streaming platforms, right? So it's like on Netflix, it's on Crunchyroll and stuff like that. And so even though it probably brings people to the platforms, it isn't their show, as they like to say, and stuff like that. They can't get the full slice of the pie. So that's probably the thing of why they wouldn't exactly, even though CBC would just be for Canada, yeah, it's like it probably still wouldn't be great for them. They still wouldn't like that.
Worth remembering, though, it is worth remembering two other titles that kind of made its own waves that started with CBC: Schitt's Creek, Kim's Convenience.
Mhm.
So who knows which way this could go? Like, really, who knows, right? And for reference, CTV has had its hand in Anna Green Gables too, because a movie that they did, I think, almost 20 years ago, kind of followed up with Megan Follows once again playing Anne, because she was the star of the 85 version. That's another story altogether, though, right?
Yeah, it's nice to see something different out there and stuff like that, and we'll see how people react to it. But it's not that, as we said, those masterpiece theater, like not all of them made their way out and stuff like that out of Japan. And sometimes when they had different episodes come out of Japan, or different parts of the series, or other similar type series like those masterpiece novels and stuff like that that they would animate as anime, sometimes they would work their way over in weird ways to North America and Europe, and it would be to either those public broadcasters. And sometimes I'm thinking of TVO has had some back in the day and stuff like that that were
Little Prince,
yep.
the dubs
the one
were
with the animals one with all the animals. I forget.
Green Forest.
Green Forest,
Fables
yep.
of the Green Forest, and I don't know what the Japanese title would be off the top, but those are the two that I could think of. And I remember
sometimes, they would make them more North American, but some of them had come in different ways and stuff like that before. So hopefully this will be an interesting new wave, and maybe some people will take some interest in stuff like that, because it's very different from probably anything else you're going to see on Crunchyroll. It's not moe, it's not shonen, it's not shoujo. You know what I mean? It's
shoujo-ish. I mean, it's shoujo enough because of where as I said,
definitely. They're obviously they'll have the elements in there. We know that.
Yeah,
but
I mean, it's the elements that kind of it caught on to, probably, in terms of it, and that's helped its popularity back then. Has shoujo evolved in the 70 years since? Of course. But it's probably worth looking at maybe starting to understand the Western influence on the shoujo genre. Because now, having just talked about this over the last 20 minutes or so, there is Anna Green Gables is as Western an influence as you can get into the genre, right? So there's something to think about. Hanako ta Ann was the NHKA drama adaptation of the biography that was there. So I don't know if that's worth watching. There is a translation of Hanako Morioka's biography, as I just noted. I didn't know that existed until I looked that up over the last number of hours. So, and that came out in 2021. I would actually search for that, to be honest with you now. But that's kind of worth noting, right? I can put that beside the biography of Hokusai's daughter, which I have here, which is actually a Canadian author. So there's something to think about there, and we will almost certainly talk a little bit more about Anne Shirley before it comes out. And remember one other thing, and I always don't put this outside of the realm of possibility. While it's set for domestically on NHKE, let's see what NHK World decides to do, because it's not out of the way that they would put an anime on. Mind you, it probably would more likely have to be about food, because Sushi and Beyond, or
Maybe about some
Maiko
historical
Sanchi no
significance, like
Yeah.
Kyoto, or
Yeah, Maiko Sanchi no Makanai-san, Kyoto.
Mhm.
Yeah, this isn't as delicious. That didn't sound right. But there's a thought, and I'd like to see. I'm wondering if that's what we can look forward to, because the new season on NHK World begins in April too, right? So that could be something we could end up seeing, and it is set for 24 episodes. So we'll see what happens.
So that's interesting. So that would be through the spring and the summer and stuff like that. So
So into the fall, into October. Okay, that's a thought for later. As I said, we'll revisit it for sure. All right, so we're done with our two anime thoughts.
Did you want to make mention of the last one about our friends at Crunchyroll and stuff like that, and their sister company Aniplex?
Oh,
because we talked.
Yeah, we can mention it here, I guess, before we get into.
Yeah, that's what we had talked about. Remember, we said like they want their own thing, right? To be on their own platform, control everything, the merchandising, all that stuff. We've talked about a number of times. So it was interesting this week too that Aniplex and Crunchyroll. Obviously, Aniplex has done their own. They have their own animation studio. They've done their own anime. They basically are now part of the family with Crunchyroll and Funimation, all that fun stuff. They did all the mergers and all that fun stuff. And basically, if you want an Aniplex series, obviously it's going to be on Crunchyroll, and they've helped with the dubbing if they want to dub and all that other stuff. But it was interesting this week where Aniplex and Crunchyroll together, so the Japan and the US side, the Western side and the Japanese side, established a joint venture anime production company called Hayate in Tokyo. And that it's basically to produce content for Crunchyroll streaming service, for basically just for Crunchyroll. And they're going to have people from Crunchyroll and from Aniplex, I guess, be on this company and stuff like that, to basically, I guess, hopefully focus specifically on planning, developing, and producing anime content for Crunchyroll's streaming platform worldwide, which is interesting because you weren't already doing that already. So it's interesting they're creating another joint venture to throw into the mix. You know what I mean?
Remember, I gave my initial thoughts about this when you mentioned it to me in the stream a couple days ago. I think on Wednesday. It might have been Wednesday that I brought it up. Or either that or in the midnight hour stream on Friday, which went way too long, or longer than I had hoped. I'm going to leave this, and I do want to play this thought with you and see what you think about it. Because you're right. People would have thought of this and saying, wait, it's like Sony partnering with Sony. And the short answer is yes, it is. But, and the impression I got of it, and it sort of comes back to our long discussion over the past, since the pandemic series episodes, when we talked about the four pillars, that four pillars discussion about Sony and wanting them to consolidate everything, wanting to funnel their anime ambitions through PlayStation and all that. And then these years later, we wonder where the hell is that part of the initiative going? And I've sort of come to this thought that, well, it's not that simple. And when you have a bunch of, even in-house, and we know this in all companies, there's a lot of internal squabbles, a lot of internal discussions, things not necessarily being on the same page. That happens everywhere. That happens in every company. That happens in a lot of ventures. That happens in families. People not being on the same page, even though you're not on the same, under the same umbrella, and should all be on the same team. And maybe this is an attempt to start to put things in sync. Yes or no? Or you can tell me if this is like a part of wanting to get everything a little bit more in order in that sense. Because that's the impression I'm getting. That's the blush I had when I read this article, when this news came down.
Like there could be some of that. There could be some of the background stuff we had talked about before with Katakawa and stuff like that, even though Katakawa still has its own destiny, is still its own company, and basically they didn't want to be taken over by someone outside Japan. So Sony basically has become one of their largest shareholders, basically to help them out, but there's still a benefit going both ways. Maybe this way they also might be taking stuff from Katakawa that they want and funneling it through here as well. It's another pipeline. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So basically, to consolidate it or firm it up in some
There
ways,
could
right?
be, but it's interesting because it creates more bureaucracy and stuff like that
So you
in
think
one
this is,
sense.
yeah, in some sense, maybe, but they'll still there will still be issues.
And as we said too, we know that a lot of these anime, like there's tons of them coming out every single season, right? And tons of them are going to Crunchyroll because they're the biggest player on the block and stuff like that. And it's interesting to see with this when we're going to see that first series, because it's probably going to be a number of seasons down the road, because as we know, for all those Japanese does, like they book years in advance. You know what I mean? To say, okay, we've got the production committee together, we got the money, we got the voice actor. You know what I mean? We got the space, we got the time slot on the TV and everything else. Like it takes time to get those all done. So it'll be interesting to see when this kind of revs up and stuff like that, because we might not see the fruits of the labor till a year and a half or 2 years down the road. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah,
And we know
and
they've
once
done
again,
other collaborations before, right? We've seen them do collaborations with Adult Swim and stuff like that, with Shamu and with was it Princess Pirate Fena and stuff like that. And they did sub, and then Adult Swim did the dub. That's why, in thinking of that, it makes me wonder about the coming weeks, the next season. Adult Swim is doing Lazarus. I'm intrigued to see that series, if it's going to stream somewhere with Japanese dub and then English subtitles, because we know it's going to be in Japan and then premiere kind of similar time frame on Adult Swim, but just for the English dub. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. And that one's important because it's the same creative team as Cowboy Bebop and stuff like that, kind of going back to their roots with Watanabe and that.
So there's that story. Just have that out there. We got a little time. Do you want to go back into the video game sphere for a couple minutes?
Sure, we can. There's been tons and tons of stories and tons of content for content creators to just flame on about whatever side they're on, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, when we talked yesterday, this might have been the thing that dominated our pre-production conversation.
Well, the problem is, like, it's hard to, like, there's a few things you could say on and stuff like that. Do you want to talk about the Assassin's Creed releasing this week and kind of some of what's been going on there? Or
yeah, I think that one's a little bit more interesting. I know you were on the Silent Hill bit too. It's just
Silent Hill was interesting. Like that one they're finally doing like they had announced some of these games last year, right? And so we had Silent Hill 2 finally come out last year, and I got it when it was on sale because they were trying to charge full price, the new full price, which is $89.99 Canadian, but I got it on sale when it was tax free during the Christmas season, because a lot of these studios and AAA ones, they see, like, unlike Nintendo, it feels like they devalued their product very quickly. They go on sale like a few months after the fact. So it's like, why am I going to buy it day one then if you're not going to hold your value? But that one was Silent Hill F. It is the first one set in Japan. They finally got a trailer out and stuff like that, and it looks incredible. It has definitely these feelings of Fatal Frame and Siren to it, as well as Silent Hill. They're getting the original composer back. They're getting the creator of that had written Higurashi and Umineko. He's going to be writing for it and stuff like that, and he's a big fan of Silent Hill F. So hopefully it comes out later this year, and it comes out well. And I may have to wait for it because, as I said, there was the price point where people were wondering, is this price on Video Games Plus.ca, which is a Canadian online video game company? They had put the price not at $89.99, but at $99.99. which is an interesting price bump. So we'll see if that holds. We're getting closer to being over $100 like we were back in the early 90s with some of the cartridges that had special chips in them.
Yeah.
So we're going to go back to the future again, right? Oh, man.
Back to
But that one was interesting too. We'll talk about it another time. But they had an interesting warning about it, and I had read it to you and stuff like that. Let's see if I can find it very quickly and stuff like that. But it was just something else. And so there are different warnings that they've given out now, and that's fine. And we've seen it in movies and other places. And I think I had told you, remember Ralph Fiennes, and then even another great English actor, Sir Ian McClellan, had talked about trigger warnings and stuff like that, and said, well, that's fine, but it feels like we've kind of lost the plot, like it's going like crazy over the top. It's like this is supposed to be a discussion between the audience and the creator and stuff like that, and they've probably seen some reviews, they've probably seen like, you know what I mean, got an idea of what this piece of work is about. So you would think at that point they would make the decision, do I really want to go and watch this? Do I really want to go and play this? And so we do probably have an ESRB rating and all that stuff. And so that should give you an idea on the console side, but definitely PC side, on top of if they have that ESRB rating, if they have that, or the PAL rating or Zero rating, whatever it is, they seem to have these extra warnings. And so the disclaimer on this new Silent Hill game, the Silent Hill F, it is the longest I've ever seen and the most intriguing. Like, it really is a head scratcher. So I'll read it quickly. It says, disclaimer, this game contains depictions of gender discrimination, child abuse, bullying, drug-induced hallucinations, torture, and graphic violence. This game is set in Japan in the 1960s and contains depictions based on the customs and culture of the time. These depictions do not reflect the opinions or values of the developers or any individuals involved. If you feel uncomfortable at any point while playing, please take a break from playing or speak with someone you trust. And I'm just thinking to myself, it sounds like, oh my God, I just shake my head. I'm like, okay, you can have warnings. We have the ESRB. They're letting you know that this is a Silent Hill. This is a survival horror game. Like, if you didn't know this going in, I don't know what you were expecting, right? But it definitely felt over the top. Yeah, it's taking place in the 1960s. Like Umineko and Higurashi, they happened in the 80s and stuff like that. So obviously, yes, it's going to be very different to what we expect nowadays and stuff like that. And that one is interesting because we've seen that in Tezuka manga and stuff like that, and that makes sense. But in a Silent Hill game where we're probably expecting certain things, it just seems a lot of it feels out of place and stuff like that. Like, I think some people would see the preview, see the reviews, see the rating and stuff like that, and know that some of this should be there up front. You know what I mean?
an overcompensate, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think that's some of what Ian McClellan and Ralph Fiennes had talked about. It's like, what are we doing? Like, yes, we don't want to offend people, but has to be a little something between the creator and the person consuming it. And yes, there is ratings for books, for movies, for video games, all that stuff, and reviews. And a lot of people, I don't think they're going to go in blind just saying, hey, I'm just going to pay money and just watch this off the cuff. You know what I mean? I think they do a little investigation.
It's just you need one.
And yes, that is what happens. It's so weird in this. Everyone's worried about lawsuits. You know what I mean? In this world now.
Yeah, I mean,
we never used to think about way back then, but as you said, it only takes one, and everyone's worried about that one lawsuit that's going to bring them down. And it's like, have we really become that society?
In some ways. I mean, it's just that there is this worry about throwing out the baby with the bathwater and not seeing the forest for the trees, whichever version of the whichever cliche you'd like to see. And I think this is one of those things, right? This is one of those. one of those things where we just worry about accidentally doing both.
And so that one, yeah, that was in their write-up and stuff like that at the bottom, but it'll probably be on the PC version, might have that if you probably don't have any settings set that you say, hey, I am adult, I understand what I'm getting into, but some of them may show that. But it's definitely interesting seeing a lot of those. It's like, okay, how did we get to this place? Because I had a pretty good idea. And it's like sometimes, yeah, there may be something that challenges me or maybe even offends me in a piece of media, but I have to digest that and say, okay, what's going on with this series and stuff like that. And sometimes I'll continue on and then it'll be an interesting experience. Other times, yeah, I might just turn it off and say, you know what, I'm returning this, or I don't care about this.
Yeah, I think if that's maybe that's part of it, because people are going to pay significant amounts for this, could pay a good amount of money to be.
I know, like if they got day one, and if it's like we said, that's interesting. But I think a lot of people would want to wait for the sale, as we say.
It's about the investment, I think, because you can have that same disclaimer with a movie, but the cost of admission, the cost to watch, may not be nearly as much. And I think that's where people want to start taking their chance, taking their shot, whatever that shot is. So it's about I think that's part of where they are on this, or at least that's my impression. I may be absolutely off, but I just think about, okay, so what did the offended viewer just put in? And it isn't just time. It might be money, and that's what it always come. That's what a lot of these things always come down to. So maybe this is where that is why the seeming need for this disclaimer. I wish I could give you a better answer. It's just,
and some of the warnings, it's like, okay, yeah, it's just a small warning and all that, but it felt, and you heard me read it, it felt very detailed for a warning. You know what I mean? And very specific in a way. And so
it wasn't just detailed, it was serious. Right? Some people like
and telling you to seek help at the end. Like I've never seen that as much with some of the warnings. They'll give you the warning of what it is, but I don't think I've heard, maybe you should seek help now too.
Yeah. I mean some of the warnings you see in our fandom can tend to be a little tongue in cheek too, right? I mean, when you talk about these warnings, I remember watching the beginning of Mystery Science Theater 3000 DVD, and then they put up the disclaimer, the FBI disclaimer about pirating it, with a picture of J. Edgar Hoover. And as they're showing the warning, suddenly you start seeing somebody draw a mustache on J. Edgar Hoover. That's the tongue in cheek. That's the tongue in cheek. Or one of my personal favorites, Critical Mass. When who's behind Critical Mass? Who was behind Critical Mass? That was Right Stuff.
That was Right Stuff.
Yeah.
Before, obviously, they had to sell it, to Adult Source and stuff like that when Crunchyroll took them over, because they wouldn't obviously allow that on.
Years ago, when they started bringing out the Cool Devices series, right? They put in a disclaimer saying the depictions of this are of people well over 18 years old, and probably drawn on cell sheets that are well over 18 years old. Nothing involved here is under the age of 18. And I just remember that. I just remember that line. I just remember that disclaimer. This type of disclaimer just sounds, to coin a phrase I used a couple days ago, as serious as a heart attack. So,
but yeah, no, it's not good. Just like now that we've seen a trailer, I think some people are like, and I think they're looking forward and we want to see more. But I think a lot of people, because this is probably the first real new Silent Hill, and probably the first one set in Japan, and given the pedigree of the people, as we said, behind it, since it's more from the Japanese end and stuff like that, because they've had Silent Hill for the years go to through many Western developers and stuff like that, to have it back with the Japanese team, it's interesting to see what they bring forward and stuff like that, and how it'll resonate with the audience, because we're like at the color me intrigued moment. And then if it does come out late this year, we'll see how everyone reacts, and I'll see how that goes, and then maybe get when it's on sale. Because as I think I told you before, and going into our next story, I do not play many AAA games and stuff like that anymore. And with, as we said, it's like they're nickel and diming us for everything they can and stuff like that. And I'm like, I just want to like get the game, either download it or have it on the disc or cart, like I've always had. Put it in. If there's a small update, there's a small update. But when I start the game, I don't want to see things saying, "Oh, I have to go through this legal agreement." Oh, do you want to go on to our servers now for our company servers, whether it's Ubisoft or Electronic Arts or what have you, and stuff like that, before I can finally get to the main menu and then finally say, "Can I start playing the game, please?"
Mm-hmm.
Because at least when I get, and yes, I am from that generation. Yes, I'm a Nintendo gamer and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm still playing Nintendo games and PlayStation games that have that Japanese feel from way back in the day, because that was my generation. But at least I know a lot of them. I go in, bing, bang, boom, I can get playing and stuff like that, and I can have a fun time. You know what I mean? There isn't all this rope-a-dope and stuff like that.
This is where we are sometimes, I'm afraid.
But it comes, like we had talked, we might as well get into it. But yeah, Assassin's Creed Shadows, after all these delays and all this nonsense, it's finally came out this week. Came out on March 20th, on the Thursday, and same day it got delayed to the same day as Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Switch, which was a re-release. And so I think there were jokes about who's going to sell more. Obviously, Shadows, Assassin's Creed Shadows probably is going to sell more, but there are these other questions. So with the AAA sphere, like they've had some trouble with Electronic Arts, with Ubisoft. Like Electronic Arts has had issues with the new Dragon Age Veilguard and stuff like that with that series, and it's not performed to expectations. We've seen Sony with Concord and stuff like that. They literally had to just kibosh a live service game and give people back their money. But it's one of those things, and I know other content creators and other people have talked to it, and I'm kind of in that similar agreement. It's not that the video game industry is crashing. It's these AAA big studios are starting to crash and stuff like that. They saw some success, more success in COVID, and seemed to think this was going to continue on. And they had other factors in the studios that happened. And the thing is, they have these massive teams, like thousands of people. They're trying to make them for these systems like PC and for PlayStation 5 and for the Xbox Series X. And they're trying to make this beautiful thing. It's taking them now years. Like, it's not like you can make a game in 1 or 2 years. We're talking about these cycles of about 5 years and stuff like that. And things can change in that time, you know what I mean, about player expectations and all these other things. But they've just become so bloated. Like, they should really, as some people have said, maybe look back to Nintendo. Nintendo decided to get out of the arms race. You know what I mean? Of graphics and all these other things. And we've seen how they've been able to get these games out maybe at least once a month. And maybe not all of them are AAA quality, but some of them are AA, some of them are smaller games. But that's probably the way of the future. Is we're not talking about you make that indie game, that smaller game and stuff like that, because they probably kill for numbers, like what Shadows Creed, like Assassin's Creed Shadows probably is getting, or what Avowed got, or what Dragon Age got, or what Concord got. Indie studios would kill for those numbers, but at least have it within spec and stuff like that, and maybe split up some of your studios and say, hey, why don't we make some smaller AA or smaller AAA games to get a few more out there and get some revenue and things moving and have some creative spark in our teams and stuff like that, and have like focus on certain mechanics. We don't have to make the bloated game and say we need to do everything. Let's just focus on certain mechanics and go there. And we've seen that with some other games out there on the market where they keep their focus, and then basically things happen. I think, what was it? Was it the Dungeons and Dragons game? Oh, I forget the team and stuff behind that.
Too. I mean,
and that's terrible, but
not something I keep up with, right?
See, the thing is, because I don't keep up with all the AAA games, like I see them here and there and stuff like that, and people and shall probably flame me for it, but it's one of those things where some of them do make those commitments and stuff like that, and then it goes. But the thing with Assassin's Creed Shadows, this is kind of like Ubisoft's, like they really needed this to succeed. They had a really bad 2024, as we know. They Skull and Bones did terribly for them. They had what should have been another home run, which was a Star Wars game, Star Wars Outlaws, and that has failed to perform for them and stuff like that. And now we have Assassin's Creed Shadows with its many different controversies and stuff like that. I'm not sure it's going to save them, because basically Ubisoft's stock, as we know, has plummeted, and it supposedly, this game came out on Thursday. Instead of the stock going up, it went down, and so they're in not a great position. And so for the stock, like the people owning the stock of Ubisoft, they have been at the doorstep of Ubisoft saying, what are you guys doing? Because they're worried they're not going to make their money back. The only people who will make their money back, as I told you, Mike, is probably Tencent, which owns a bit of the shares. They're the second largest shareholder. And then the founding family and stuff like that. That's in France and stuff like that. They'll make their money back. And they've talked about, through the filings, different things about their series, right? So Assassin's Creed's still a beloved series, and things like Rayman and some of those others, they still have value to a degree right now. They talked about spinning those off into a different company and all these other things. So they are, I feel like they're in this death spiral and they don't know how to get out of it. And it's,
yeah, I'm just looking at Ubisoft's current stock prices, and
yeah, it's,
which one I should be referring to be honest, right?
I would there's not really much you can say, because it's not been pretty for them. Like you could recite any of them, and
for the week that just ended, it is down. It is down for the month, for the last 3 months. You know, it's yo-yoed. It did hit a peak of, what's this, 1364, and I guess this is in euro. This is a UBI.
Yeah, that was in euro because they're in France and that. Mm-hmm. But it was way higher.
They're presently
like years ago, so it has really dropped. Yeah, you know what I mean. So,
and over the past 3 months, it's down. It's now down. The peak over the last week was 1364. It finished up for the week at 12.15. That's for the week.
Yeah,
that's just a snapshot.
But they were way higher than that,
like
years ago, and that wasn't an overvaluation. Maybe there was a tiny bit during the pandemic, but not that much. But they have fallen so far,
from 87 all the way to 12 in the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
The peak was like in sometime in 2020, roughly 2021. So, okay.
But yeah, they started making some of these games probably around that time when we're talking about Assassin's Creed Shadows and about Star Wars Outlaw and stuff like that. But it's sad because Ubisoft has many people across the globe. Obviously, they started in France. They have tons of people in France. We know in Canada, they support many jobs here in Canada. The people doing Assassin's Creed Shadow, a lot of the heavy lifting was done in Montreal, Quebec City, and Toronto. You know what I mean? And those people, I don't know about their future. I feel really bad for them. And they have people obviously in the US and China and other places. So it's just not a great situation. And you feel for them, you know what I mean? That you wish someone, and it's kind of all over the place. It's not just with the corporate types and the C-suite, it's also with some of the developers and stuff like that. We've seen with some of these games that they kind of torpedo their own games and stuff like that. And it's like you wish someone could just say to them, and it's not sure if anyone could, what are they doing and stuff like that. Because sometimes if you have a long development cycle, right, 5 years and stuff like that, you things can change and stuff like that. So for Shadows, let's go over what some of the issues were. and some people have had different feelings on it, is this should have been a home run for Ubisoft. Like, a lot of people are saying, hey, why don't we have it in the Japanese setting? We've seen what's happened with Sony and Ghost of Tsushima, right? With Sucker Punch, and that was beloved across the globe, even in Japan. So let's see what happens there, right? And so it should have been a home run for them. And you could have said, hey, why don't we take that, what we saw, what Sony did and Sucker Punch did, and envision this in our own way in Assassin's Creed and stuff like that. And it looks like, unfortunately, it's kind of went off the rails on a few parts. Like, we look at the reviews and stuff like that, say it's great. We, at the moment, it's probably like around 80, 81 on Metacritic or something like that. We'll see how it pans out over the next few weeks. But some of those reviews, some of the people read them, it just leaves me shaking my head how they got to those reviews, because some people on YouTube, they're saying, how did you get to this conclusion? Like, there was one, I think it was VG 24/7 or something like that, where they had 100 out of 100, as I told you, Mike. And then the first sentence, it's kind of like saying, oh, there's some problems with this game. And it's like, well, why the heck did you give it 100? And then some people were looking at what a reviewer for them did that would have been on a similar system for Ghost of Tsushima, and they said they gave it a 60 out of 100. So how does that even compare? But a lot of people, even content creators, they said, this is a new engine. This is a newer team, obviously, but they said the game is gorgeous. It looks fantastic. And what I've seen of it, Mike, the game looks like fantastic. It's like a lived in world and all that stuff. So that, bravo to them. You know what I mean? Like, that's fantastic. But then you get into the world and stuff like that, you start playing, and then the going in between, they said sometimes it feels like there's like nothing to do and stuff like that. It felt like they were doing things in between getting to different places in Ghost of Tsushima and even other games, but it didn't feel like that was happening here in Assassin's Creed Shadows. Then they look behind the veil at a few other things. So the artistry and all that is great, but some of the architecture, as some people have pointed out, even on the Japan side, is it's not all exactly Japanese. It feels like very Oriental and sometimes from the mainland China and other stuff like that. So it's like, did we do our research? Like, we think about, since the heavy lifting was done in Canada, and we like to consider ourselves multicultural, and I'll say with a few of the other things, like, who were they talking to? Do we have people that were talking to them about how they want to represent Japan and stuff like that? And did they talk to something like, maybe go to the Japanese embassy, maybe go to the Japan Foundation? You probably have a strong Japanese community, as we know, here in Toronto and here in probably in Montreal, and that. Talk to the people and see if they can give you contacts in Japan and stuff like that to make your game better, even though it would have been hard, because yes, we did have COVID when they began and stuff like that. And some of it relates to as we continue on. So we talked about architecture. Some of the voices were okay, as some people said, but other ones, even in the same village, there was some questionable voice acting. It's like, I don't know about this. And then like, it continues on and on and on about you know, how they want to be in feudal Japan, all this stuff. Nobunaga is in there. I know the biggest one that first came out was Yasuke being in there. I know that they have two protagonists, right? Yasuke and Naoe. Naoe is the female protagonist, and a lot of them have been using it, like in the recent promotion, and basically saying, it's weird because Yasuke was their prime promotional thing till a couple of months ago and stuff like that, which is interesting. And they couldn't get this dialectic between, are we historically accurate or are we historical fiction? It's like, what are we? It's like, are we as good as we want to be to represent somewhat of the time, or are we more like The Last Samurai and Tom Cruise and stuff like that? Like, it's, and they could never make that distinction. And they actually made an apology tweet from their Ubisoft Japan account and stuff like that about some of the stuff they did, because some people were like, what's going on? Like, why is Yasuke a samurai and stuff like that? Yes, Yasuke was like, he did exist. He was in Japan. He was a black man in Japan. he was at that time period, but based on like primary evidence and all this other stuff, he wasn't. It wasn't likely he was a samurai and stuff like that, regardless of what someone like Thomas Lockley, which is one of the ones that promoted this, says. Like you had, like I've seen many history professors and many others when I've written essays in those type of classes, and they're very serious about this and stuff like that. That it goes through rigorous research and stuff like that. You got to look at your primary sources, your secondary sources. You got to look at where it's coming from, who's writing it, because as we said, right, Victor's write the history sometimes and stuff like that. But it doesn't pass the smell test. And if they said, you know what, yeah, we can have Yasuke in there, that's no problem, but let's remember that he probably wasn't a samurai and stuff like that. If you want him to be a samurai, that's no problem. No one has an issue with that. And as we go further, if you're playing as Yasuke, so they had originally wanted to release this end of last year. They delayed it to March, right? So they delayed it to the 20th. In January, one of their promo videos, and that really set Japan off, is they had Yasuke. They had used some, as I said, remember, they had some Japanese shrines in there, and they had actually like used the likeness and stuff like that. And so in one of the Japanese shrines and stuff like that, that is real, is in Japan, they had Yasuke going through, slicing people up, the blood and all that, going into the shrine. He can break things in the shrine, stuff like that. He's walking in with his shoes on, which is just not a great look and stuff like that. And you may say, well, we've seen that in other Assassin's Creed games and stuff like that, where they've done other things. But you have to be careful with other cultures and stuff like that. And it may not be a great look. And it definitely, like in the recent month, there was even a YouTube video from that prefecture, from that shrine, talking about basically the like Assassin's Creed Shadow and what they saw from that video, and saying, if you're allowing players to do that, we're worried about them doing that in real life. And it's just not acceptable to see that in a video game. And to think they had that in their promotion, they had that as an option, stuff like that. Like, let's be clear, they did put a patch day one. So on Thursday, they took that all out. So you can't do anything like that in the shrines and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Nothing's destructible. You can't hurt people and stuff like that, which is good. But they had that out there 2 months before, allowing that option. Like, someone should have said that like a year, God knows how long before, and said, you know what, maybe this isn't a good idea to have that happen in this location. Other games and other films and stuff like that, they look and say, you know what, let's treat this with respect and stuff like that. We're not going to allow certain things to happen in these scenes and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And they didn't allow that to happen. It feels like they're just playing catch up, because when they're releasing this patch, they're in the Japanese diet talking about the same thing that they were talking in the prefecture and the shrines, and saying, Mr. Prime Minister, what's going on with this? And it was intertwined with the tourism issue in Japan, right? With these kick streamers and these live streamers going to Japan thinking they can do whatever they want, right? Like Johnny Somali and stuff like that.
Well, he's in Korea now. In jail in Korea, might we add.
Yep. And so you F around, you find out. But let's put it this way. The Japanese prime minister was answering that and basically saying, we have to do so. And some people are banning foreigners from certain bars and all this other stuff because of these negative interactions. And it's not that we haven't seen this around the world before. And it can be anyone. It can be not just American or Chinese. It can be Canadians. It can be people from Britain, from Europe that act like an idiot. But it affects everyone. And the other thing is like, okay, how are we going to deal with this? And then talk to people. It's like, when you go somewhere else, you treat it with respect, just like you would treat your own home, right? Hopefully. And the other key thing is they brought up the Assassin's Creed Shadows, because it's like, you're doing this in the video game, right? What happens if someone sees that, and then because they're seeing the streams, right, to acting and behaving badly on the subways and in public, do something in these shrines and stuff like that, God forbid, you know what I mean? And we've seen that already with some shrines. I remember how I mentioned about tourists behaving badly. I think I'm not sure if it was before COVID or it was just after COVID. and I forget which shrine it was, but they've had issues with people putting something in the bamboo of certain sacred bamboo groves and on the actual shrines themselves. You know what I mean? Like putting something like with a knife or something, like carving into them when they're not, you know what I mean? Like you shouldn't be carving into a shrine
or walking
into,
through
you know what I
Torii
mean?
gates, or walking through
And
gates,
and it was,
passageways.
and you know what? And one of the
carving.
ones they gave an example was a Canadian and his girlfriend carving their initials and a heart on, I can't remember if it was in one of the sacred bamboo groves around one of the shrines or it was on one of the shrines. But no, don't do that. Like, why are you doing that? Like, it's just not right. And there's that worry, you know what I mean? Of seeing something in the game and then translating to something else because we have all these other things happening at the same time, right? And I don't know why someone didn't pull the plug sooner. And they have thousands of people. Someone should have stood up and said, you know what, this just doesn't feel right on a few levels. You know what I mean? And
You
then
think
find out, what are we? Are we here making a thing a full fiction, or do we want to lean into this historical aspect? They could never make a decision, stuff like that.
I think you may have hit. I mean, I agree with the whole where you, like I'm in a, I can't see, I can't find a fault with it, because what was the success of Ghost of Tsushima? And I think it was just able to find that balance between historical fact and historical fiction. And it
But
didn't
as
really
we
have to
knew, it
play
was more fiction, but there
in
was
the
that
different.
Kurosawa element and stuff like that.
But I think we
But with
bring
the
in a lot
Japanese
more.
artistry, you know what I mean? That they could think it was made by a Japanese artisan.
And I think maybe this is the issue of what's going on. It's just that a lot more of these places still do exist. That's depicted in shadows, and then they make these things happen within the game in these real places, and then people feel free to want to do the exact same thing, which shouldn't be done. Is that where you are on that one?
And then the other thing is, I told you before, remember? So we said Nobunaga, like he's been in tons of media, you know what I mean? Video games, movies, whatever. So obviously he's in Assassin's Creed Shadow and stuff like that. But they had one of the romance options for Yasuke was Oda Nobunaga's sister. And you have to remember that bloodline is still going strong in the royal family of Japan and stuff like that.
Imperial family.
And then I think there might have been a quest, they said, an optional quest to loot one of the burial tombs and stuff like that, that is still out there and is part of the royal family and stuff like that. And that's not a great look either, you know what I mean? Because some people take that seriously and stuff like that. So you got to be careful. In some countries, it can get you in legal trouble if you are going against a royal family. You know what I mean? Not in Japan or
Thailand is one of the most
yes, Thailand
right?
is well known. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not as much in Japan, but it's more of a society. It'll be more of a peer pressure societal thing to do that, to speak ill, right?
But it's just, it boggles the mind, because remember, this is Ubisoft, and you think about all of them, like Microsoft and EA and stuff like that. They had their issues with their ones, but this one, you have these things where it could have been headed off at the pass as well, with actual, like, let's think about this and stuff like that. And someone there that actually was saying, does this make sense? Because I remember one thing where it was, there were two ones, but this one, I forget the lady's name from Microsoft, but they were talking about early Xbox, so over 20 years ago when the first Xbox came out, and they had courted different Japanese developers. And one Japanese dev was making a fighting game and stuff like that. And one of the music pieces he used that was like free to license and stuff like that, he had liked Ocarina of Time. And he had liked the Fire Temple theme and stuff like that. If you know about the Fire Temple theme, the original one from Ocarina of Time, there was the chants of the Quran were in some of those chants. And so for Saudi Arabia and many Muslim people, that was just, they were lucky that the internet wasn't as big, you know what I mean? But obviously they fixed it. But for Xbox, for that one game, even though it was still kind of pre-internet and stuff like that, they had to get on that really quick, as the one Microsoft exec said, because none of them thought it was going to be a big deal. It turned into a big deal because Saudi Arabia was unhappy. So many Muslim organizations were angry, but luckily that one, they only got a few of the disc press that had it in there. Most of them supposedly fixed it and stuff like that, took that one piece of music out that had the chance in it, but they had to go to Saudi Arabia and apologize for that. And after that, that was a big lesson for them, saying, you know what, we got to really think about what we're doing, because we're a global company, about the many cultures we're trying to sell to and how we're trying to represent, even in the music and other things, because what may be small to us may not be small to someone else. And it's especially a travesty because I say, how can you not have one person looking at something like that? Because remember, I told you about Ubisoft and the one scratching head moment where I said they had, was it a director of monetization of single player games,
yes.
monetizations of single player games, which just blows my mind. And you would think, I guess they have more power, because that's what I told you too, that none of the reviewers mentioned. And we've seen it in many other games. It's in there in Assassin's Creed Shadows, is the monetization of all these whatever you want to call them, loot boxes and all this other stuff. Like, if you want to, like, you can progress, but there's a lot of grinding and stuff like that. So if you don't want to grind, you're going to try and go one way, but it's still going to lead you maybe want to pay real money to move further quicker. So it's like, I want to build my base and I want to see other parts of the map. So I'm sending out some people to look at other parts of the map. But if I get them and use them for resources, I can do something else quicker. So I either have to choose one option or the other. But if I want to move quicker and say take one option, then the only other option to make, like say making my map go faster, my building my base faster, that other option, if I want to really go faster, I have to pay them more money to actually, you know what I mean? Like, get through this faster, which it's like, it feels crazy that they're finding ways to nickel and dime you and say, oh yeah, you could unlock the whole game if you pay this, or if you want to do that. And it's like, because remember, time is a commodity for a lot of people. Not everyone has the time.
You can get the money back. That's it. You can get the money back. Right.
But I'm never going to pay money. That's why I haven't played AAA games for so long and stuff like that, because I don't want to see this thing when I start saying I'm signing this agreement. Oh, do I want to go onto your streaming service to play this game? Do I want to be a part of your club? Do I want to like basically buy these things to make my, like, no, I do not want to do any of those. If I want to buy DLC, it's going to be an expansion to what I've already played if I've enjoyed what I've played. You know what I mean?
It's the same reason I can only play games long after they're the fact, right? I'm not playing Yakuza Pirates in Hawaii. I'm playing Yakuza Kiwami 2 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's an older game, but maybe it's yours to discover. There are things in it I haven't seen yet. So, and that's because it's the buzz over its DLC has long come off. It's a very EA thing too. We're talking here too. Like when EA had its bad press, right?
Yeah. They all had different things. Like Microsoft has had their issue with Avowed and stuff like that, and that one kind of was because the developer said something on Twitter because they were responding to Elon Musk, even though Elon Musk was being an idiot. But the way he went about it is just like, you could have done so many things that said, hey, our game is great. We have this character builder. You can do all these positives and stuff like that. And it's a YouTube channel run by a former lady who worked at Microsoft and WB Games, Laura Fry. And so she had some interesting insight on different things. And her insight on that for Avowed with that Matt Hansen character is that, you know what, one tweet can sink your game and stuff like that. All that hard work your teammates and you were working on can all be for naught if you got to think about what you say. And she said the same thing. Yes, E3 doesn't happen anymore, but she said, I remember Microsoft, yes, they're based in Washington. E3 was in LA. When we were getting on that plane to go through to E3 and stuff like that, we had to be at our professional best once we got on that plane. Because guess what? There were other people from the press, from other studios, and all that stuff. So there has to be a sense of professionalism. And she said, what happened to social media? Like, there is outlines in a lot of companies about how you use your social media. And she's like, well, what was going on with that with this fella? Because they should have said to him, you know what, maybe you should take that down. Maybe you should not be doubling down and going after Elon Musk and saying, I'm going to do more of this. I'm going to be more woke or more whatever. You know what I mean? Like, why don't you say, hey, we have a game. We'd love you to try it. There's many options that you can make your character and you can be whoever you want. And this is going to be fantastic. This is going to be great. You know what I mean? But they don't do that. And everyone pays for it. They paid for it with that one. We're paying for it in different ways, as we explained with Assassin's Creed Shadows. And it's not just the game itself. I told you about a few of the other things. So there was that one piece of merchandise. We'll talk about that first. And it was a figure.
Let's show it
and
now.
It had Yasuke and it had Naoe. And Mike's just going to bring it up on the screen. So you see Yasuke, and then Naoe's on top, and you see a Torigate, but it's just a one-legged Torigate. And so you would think, okay, what's the big deal about this? Well, the thing is, there's only one-legged Torigate in all of Japan. And Torigates are, as we know, they are cultural and symbols and very, you know what I mean, just like shrines, very respected, revered, and they have a special place in the Japanese culture and all that. So for this one-legged Torigate, there's only one in Japan, and that's in Nagasaki. And the reason that one-legged Torigate is there is because the atomic bomb had been dropped on Nagasaki, and only one part of the Torigate survived. And they left it there just like Hiroshima did with a lot of their stuff as a reminder, right, for future generations. And unlike Hiroshima, where we know a lot of the story, we know a lot of the different buildings and elements they left there, Nagasaki definitely celebrates and lets people know about the tragedy of the atomic bomb as well, not as much as Hiroshima, but it's like because they don't do as much and they still have some of the things, you would think someone out there would look at this and say, maybe this isn't a great idea to have this type of figure with the one-legged Torigate. You know what I mean? Especially given the connotations to this. There's only one in all of Japan, and it is not for the right reasons. You know what I mean?
I guess the figure which we just showed, it might be the encapsulation of a lot of the issues I know you see with Assassin's Creed Shadows. Like just that, like if you're to sum it up in one thing, in one visual, that could be it. That could be it, right? I mean,
and I think
because you just went through a whole list. You just went through a whole list of some of the cultural ills that have irked the Japanese people.
Yeah, like there's just been so many like L's, and you just don't they could have delayed this game till Kingdom Come. They still and this is what they're hanging on their hat for this company to get it out of this like hole they've dug for themselves the past year. Like they are just in a death spiral, and I don't know how they're going to get out. And you have all the AAA things of, as I said, the modernization and all that other stuff. And you think about, remember I told you too, and maybe some people would buy it, that's fine, but it's not something I would buy. And we've seen it in recent AAA games like from EA and from Ubisoft. And so from Assassin's Creed Shadows, they had that big special edition, right? So it's like, what, $200 US or some ridiculous price. And it has the statue, it has all the trinkets, all the other things. And that's fine. The one thing I noticed, and it irks me, is you're spending all that money, and then for the game, you're not getting a physical edition of the game. You're just getting a digital code. And maybe it's because they want to sell you the highest tier of that digital code, you know what I mean? Where it says, oh, you get it 3 days early. Oh, you get this. Oh, you get that. But it's like, it just doesn't, in my mind, if I'm getting a physical special edition for a video game or a movie or something like that, the trinkets are nice if it's the right things, but at least give me the product that I'm going into. That is the reason I'm there. Give me the physical edition of that
Basically,
thing. You know,
give me the core. Remember in our long discussions about merchandise, anime merchandise. We know that the industry works on the secondary stuff, but in the end, it's still about the core. And if you're gonna, and I guess where you're going, you can
the core Pragna.
Yeah, if you're gonna ask people to pay premium, like a large price, have a core to give, and that's not the case. It's just
something that I'm going to. Core. And the thing that I'm actually going to own, because remember, since they're giving you just a digital code in that, you don't know if one day if they go belly up for Ubisoft or whatever happens, am I still going to have that down the line for that digital copy and stuff like that? And it's sad because I saw that and I thought I'd seen it all, remember, with consoles. And we've seen it with all the big three. We've seen it with Microsoft. We've seen it with Sony. We've seen it with Nintendo, where instead of having the pack-in game this generation, it's like, well, here's a nice code for you. I hope that'll be nice to get you on your way and stuff like that. I would rather have the physical game, even though I know most other people don't give a you-know-what. So.
Yeah, I guess that's where I am. But then again, by that point, when I'm finally interested, I think just about everything that I want from the digital code is already there, from the digital download. And it's at a price that I'm willing, that I can, digest, I guess.
Mm-hmm. But
as I said, I understand. It's just that I respect the feeling. I respect the feeling. It's just that I also ultimately those feelings I have to also wonder about myself.
Wow. I can tell you, like, so where we're at now. Remember, I told you how they're saying and stuff like that. So I think, what was it? It was the official Assassin's Creed one around launch day or the Friday. They said, "Hey, we got to 1 million players," and then I think on Saturday or some nonsense like that, the UK Assassin's Creed Twitter or whatever said, "Oh, we're at 2 million players." Well, what does that mean? It definitely does not mean units sold and stuff like that, because we've seen the units sold building up. It's also how they did it with this one, because they're in such dire straits. They put it on Steam and stuff like that day one, unlike they've never done before. They have been throwing out copies to whatever creators they could to just pump the tires and stuff like that.
Get the Twitch and then get the Twitch streams going, right?
And then the other thing is they have remember, as I said, so EA and Ubisoft, kind of like Xbox, have their own streaming platform for their games and stuff like that, right? So it's their day one for Ubisoft streaming platform for Assassin's Creed Shadow. And so some people might say, you know what, I'm not going to pay, and we're talking from us in Canada, $89.99 for the standard edition, or if I want to pay more, I can pay over $100 more for more garbage. I can do that, but I'm not going to pay that. And what they do is they just get the standard edition by saying, you know what, I'm going to pay whatever Ubisoft wants per month for their streaming service. Maybe it's $20 or $15. I don't know what it is, but it's a smaller amount, right? And decide that they're just going to play it within the month and then cancel their subscription. So that's how you kind of maybe get to those players numbers and stuff like that. And we've seen the Steam numbers, because Steam DB, and yes, that is a very small slice of the picture as people dispute these things, but it's just another thing showing they're not hopefully doing as well as they should be, because we've seen Monster Hunter, the new Monster Hunter game, Monster Hunter Wilds from Capcom last month, and they were getting great numbers on Steam and other places. So you can kind of get an idea that Shadows is just not performing to what it should be and stuff like that. It's not going to, and saying these players numbers isn't going to make investors any more confident. We've seen it, that little dip and stuff like that. They're probably even more worried.
Can I give a parallel that might be a little bit more relevant to us, and maybe when I could understand a little better?
Mm.
The initial ratings for the Cowboy Bebop live action, which were very good at the time, and then it kind of bottomed out nicely. And you think that could be where we are? That's the scenario we could be looking at here.
Well, it seems like there's like this divide and stuff like that in some of these, as I told you, with some of these games. We've seen it with Avowed, we've seen it with Concord, we've seen it with Dragon Age of the Veilguard, we're seeing it now with Assassin's Creed Shadows, we saw it with Outlaws and stuff like that, that there feels like there's a split between the developers and their player bases and stuff like that. And they have these long development cycles, and no one in between is saying, are we still like, should we still be on this path? Should we think about maybe shaking things up here or there? You know what I mean? Or focus on certain, like, not make everything great, but focus on key competencies, like one or two, to make the player feel great about what they're playing and stuff like that, and keep it more focused than bloated. Because remember, a lot of these teams are over thousands of people and stuff like that. So you never know what's going to go wrong when you're doing something in that type of environment. Like it's something to think about, and you're just like, what's going on there? Like, I know that obviously some of the reviewers and stuff like that, and we've seen it with Disney and stuff like that, where you want access, at least give us a decent or a nice review. And we've seen them giving a lot of nice reviews from the legacy media, whatever you want to call them, the normal websites. And if you're just listening to them and not the players and maybe some of the content creators that are giving criticism, they're not giving harassment. Some of them are giving criticism and saying some of the things I've said. That's not harassment, that's criticism. We're trying to help you dig yourself out of the hole you've created for yourself for some of these guys. But if you don't want to listen, people are not going to buy the game like they used to and stuff like that. And you're going to have a downward trend, and it's not going to work for you. Because remember, it's like millions and like hundreds of millions of dollars to make these games now for over a long development cycle, and they have to make that money back, right, Mike? Like, how are they going to make that back when they're only having like 2 to 5 million sales and stuff like that over the lifetime? They need more. They need like 30 million plus and stuff like that. They can't have the numbers indie games or Nintendo games get, where it's just, oh, we got over 1 million sales. They need more than that to support all these people and all these jobs. Like, and it just boggles the mind how they can't see that. Like, it was another funny thing. I saw it online. How long do you think the credits for Assassin's Creed Shadows is? And I said there are thousands of people. And remember, they had to use tons of technology too. So they have to let everyone know about what the tech is and the licenses for that too.
I know. So there's
do you have a guess? I can tell you.
I don't.
What if I told you around 2 hours?
For credits?
I'm not joking. They actually had the video, and it shows. Now, obviously, I think, unlike a lot of others, if you're doing something like that, you have to be able to fast forward. So I would hope you can fast forward for that. But 2 hours, and that's just like, it's great they want to like say, hey, these are all the people that worked on the game and all this other stuff. But it just kind of shows, it's like, we have all these people. What were you guys doing? Like, it seemed like way too many people. Like, why can't we just be lean and mean, make a great game, just keep focused and just get it out there and listen to the players? And, you know, I mean, just don't go for this over ambitious 5-year cycle. And yeah, it looks great. The engine looks great. The game looks beautiful. But maybe it doesn't have to look as beautiful. You know what I mean? Maybe Nintendo's right. Like, just pull it back a bit. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen it in what people are playing. People aren't playing as many new games as they used to. They're just playing maybe 1 or 2 of the games they like for some generations. Like, we've seen that, like Fortnite and Minecraft are still going strong, but maybe that's what some of those people are playing. and other people are looking at the older games we used to play. You know what I mean? That's why the
I said
retro
I'm
market
playing.
has seen such a surge. You know what I mean? In recent
Remember, I'm
years.
playing a game from almost 10 years ago. I guess it's just a case of, well, I don't want the fastest car. I want the most reliable. Right? Anyway,
But it's like I said too. Like it's interesting to think, as we said, like, and I think some of them have some valid points, and obviously there are probably maybe some that take things too far, right? But I think a lot of the things I've seen on YouTube are fair criticisms, and we've talked about a lot of those fair criticisms, and it just is sad to see them. Like, I don't think this is going to be a good year for Ubisoft. I don't think this game is going to be as successful as they hope it's going to be. It's not going to save them. I don't know how they get out of that death spiral, but then going after players doesn't help, because remember I told you about that this is a multi-billion-dollar company or a multi-million-dollar company with Ubisoft across the world. And instead of setting up stuff to support their own employees and stuff like that, they're having the help of the Canadian government and the Canadian security establishment to watch the internet, to watch Reddit, to watch Twitter, to watch maybe they're watching Blue Sky, maybe they're watching YouTube and Twitch and stuff like that for quote unquote harassment. And that's okay, that's fine. But it feels a little, it just doesn't feel right for me. And I know some people can call me whatever they want. It's like, since I'm, you remember what I told you, I said I'm a red Tory. And so that's kind of a centrist, whatever you want to say. So guess what? I get to be called a communist Nazi, I guess. That's what I am. So.
You're just James. That's all I care. No,
but I feel like I don't think they're far out what we've talked about today. I don't think they're harassing complaints or anything like that. I think there's some valid criticisms and some real concerns that they should have looked at before, and they had so many years to kind of take that look in the mirror, and no one did. And they had thousands of people and so many resources, right?
For a couple months, I get it. That part I get.
And some of that was because they were trying to play catch up, because they really screwed up the previous year and stuff like that. And what should have been like a home run, you know what I mean? Get, like, people remember Shogun came out and stuff like that last year and stuff like that. People were talking about it. Yeah, maybe they were talking about some of how they portrayed Japan, stuff like that, but it still had some success. So they could have rode the coattails of some of that, of Ghost of Tsushima's, we say, and all that, of Assassin's Creed itself, and made their own product and had a home run. Like, this should have been a home run, and it just has fallen flat, which is just absolutely unfortunate. And it's absolutely unfortunate to see it at other companies and stuff like that, with EA and Microsoft and Sony and other things, because yeah, I was never going to buy a lot of these AAA games to begin with. A lot of the ones I've bought over the years have been ones that have been deeply discounted. So a lot of the ones I'm buying day one is, I bought day one this Thursday, were Nintendo games. I know they hold their value, and then certain Japanese games for the Sony PlayStation and things like that, and single player experiences, things I know that aren't modernized to hell and back, but it's for a different time and place, and I will put my money where my mouth is, like a lot of people. And if they don't like that we're not buying their games, then they should look themselves in the mirror, and they should reflect each time while they're doing these long development cycles and say, hey, maybe we should think about this. Or maybe at the beginning of the development, as some studios have done and stuff like that, that are kind of on the AA side, say, you know what, it is going to look amazing. It's not going to look the best, but let's focus. Let's focus. Let's do some key things and have a fun experience for the player and go out there. And sometimes it helps through different avenues, because we've seen that on Steam and PC with early access, because some developers have taken advantage of that, right? So.
Mm-hmm. I get it.
But I know we've went on way too long and stuff like that.
I know
And
we're
I
over
think
like
we
almost
probably
3 hours.
covered more in our short period of time than what we've seen on other videos that go on and rant, even though we
Well,
probably ranted too much, or I ranted too much.
Well, it's okay. This is why I have you on. This is why we're catching up with you. What's on
No,
James's mind?
they're gonna
Hence the
report me
title.
to they're gonna report me to somewhere, right?
Yeah. Well, you had me also, and just a thought, and maybe another discussion for the future. Just you remember? Did you hear the words of Masahiro Sakurai earlier this week, or within the last week or so?
Yes, I did hear about that. So I know, like, because remember, we've seen many other manga creators and other creators in Japan get similar awards from the Japanese government about, I mean, helping to promote Japanese culture and other things and stuff like that. And his was in relation to not just that he's done many games and all that stuff, but after the last Smash Brothers, he did a YouTube channel where he talks about game development and different things he's learned along the way and stuff like that. And he had it in Japanese and English. So it was not just for the Japanese audience, but for the audience outside Japan that wanted to watch in English as well. And so it's one we've talked about a lot, right? And it was that debate remember in the early 2000s, and we saw it with Capcom and Konami. It's like, oh, we got to westernize our games. It's like, oh, we're behind the curve and stuff like that. It's like, no, it's kind of like anime and what we've discussed with anime right now, with the influx of foreign influences. A lot of people are getting into those games and these shows because of the unique perspective of the Japanese creators, and they don't, don't reinvent the wheel fully. You know what I mean? It's like,
don't, or just to kind of come back to our roots with Bob McCowan's words, don't fuck with happy.
mm-hmm.
Right?
And and we see the article headline you had said, right? So the article headline you showed was Super Smash Brothers Masahiro Sakurai encourages Japanese developers to pursue the kind of games Japanese people love instead of adapting. And you could almost say that you could put anime instead of games or manga instead of games and have the same headline, right?
And much of the same discussion for that matter.
And we've had that before.
Maybe we can expand that at some other point. But
did you want to say hello to Chad since we've ignored them for so long?
I know. Well, let me acknowledge Hinami Mizawa victim. Thanks for these were like 45 minutes ago. Hina, thanks for checking in. Gifted as F. Thanks for checking in as well. Gifted was the viewer that gave me the Sega question, by the way, James. So
okay,
he did answer that, but he did give me his take on Yakuza and Sega. By the way, Gifted. We'll rewind it a bit later, because maybe I'll encourage you to watch a little more. But that's I just want to at least acknowledge those who are watching this live now. And
so I'm thinking back to it. So how many hostesses do you have left to do in the Yakuza game you're now?
Okay, so
important question.
You want me to recap where I sit there before we go today? Sure. I did all my hostesses that I have right now, and I'm missing I think 3, maybe 3 now. I only need 3 more, or 2 or 3 more, and all of them are now at least level 10. It was so funny because I intended the stream to be no more than 2 or 2.5 hours, and it went pretty much 4. And I ended up doing the stream till like 4 a.m. Early Saturday morning, and I've been paying for it all weekend since then. We knew that we'd be chatting today, and I did hint maybe if I'm lucky I can do another stream for Sunday. I'm not totally sure at this point. Just for reference, I'm not totally sure I'll be able to.
We might have went a little over time.
Yeah, a little bit, but this is par for the course when we chat, James, for all the good reasons. And since I'll put up a poll later on our X, and we'll encourage people to eventually check out all our socials. One of the traditions I want to start with the stream. Remember, Friday I'd have a soda or iced tea that you wouldn't find anywhere else. Couldn't do that because I had a coffee, and basically that's what I paid for in the stream from going to 2.5 to 4 hours. But one of the things I want to do for Sunday, can I backtrack a little bit because I want to put that up before we end. Do you want to do a community calendar thing or do you want me to still continue on this thought?
You can continue on the thought and then get the community calendar. I know you had the one you wanted to do.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things I want to do for Sundays, for the Sunday stream, if I ever had one, was, and it's probably going to go into Monday, is have people choose my controller for the stream on Sundays, or on the Sunday or Monday, right? Dual.
I think you had a picture
Sunday.
of that, right?
Yeah, DualSense Sunday. So, the Friday stream I use my black DualShock. So I'm going to ask the viewers and the listeners to choose my controller for the next stream. Although
I'm trying to think, were you doing it on your PS4 or on your
PS5? Everything's on my
PS5? Oh, PS5. Okay, I thought so.
So there's my controller. There's all the possible controllers I could end up using.
You have more than me. I have only 2, and they came with my original bundle.
Well, I have 4 DualSenses, but the 4th one will never be used. It's a 30th anniversary DualSense. It's still in the box.
You still got. See, I got that one anniversary one for the PS4 one, but yeah, I never was able to get the one because, as you said, those went quick. Mm-hmm. The 30th anniversary ones.
All 30th anniversary gear went fast. The DualSenses were probably the last thing to go, but that doesn't, which isn't saying too much because that didn't last long either. So those are my other control. Those are the controllers I could be using. You see the camo DualShock 4 on the bottom. So under the assumption that nobody will vote, and I will put the vote there later today. I'll put the vote there this evening for the Monday stream. Pick one of those controllers, and I'll use that on Monday night.
I'm not feeling the Call of Duty ones. I would have to say a controller is meant to be used, so I say you should unbox the 30th anniversary one and actually use it.
Fuck you.
But if you're that unwilling to do it, I would use the blue one.
The cobalt blue.
Here you go. The cobalt blue. I still think you have to unbox and use what you buy. Even though I guess you could technically sell it for more later down the line if it is still worth something.
It's still worth something, but let's call it for nostalgia anyway. But it sits in the closet at the moment. I said closet. So there's that. If the chat wants to chime in before we go off the air, otherwise it could be blue. I'll probably dress for blue, wear blue for that for the episode too, for the stream. Okay. You're right. I did want to share one more thing, and I'll put that up in a bit. If you're not using it, Mike, sell it, says Hina. Let me put that up. That's a very Hina thing to say, by the way. Right? We all know.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say something before, but yeah, that sums it up with that.
Yeah, you're not totally wrong, Hina.
You're not wrong indeed. Yep.
Anyway, one other thing, and before we go, let's do something in the community calendar just quickly, and I'm going to put it here now. We mentioned a couple weeks ago that the Japan Foundation New York was going to do continued their Japanese pop culture series, which had dated all the way back to the pandemic. Well, it's continued all this time. At the beginning of the month, they had a little presentation about Dragon Ball's impact in Latin America and African American communities. That was also, and it coincided with the anniversary of the passing of Toriyama. Well, the series continues in a couple days on Thursday evening. They'll have a presentation about the educational power of manga and anime. So that's by invite. Yes, it is on Eventbrite. There's the link. This is the link. We'll put it further up in the show notes. So that might be worth a check out. Of course, this is recorded, so it'll be put on the YouTube, and at a point we'll put it up as well. We'll put it up in the links as well. So this is maybe worth checking out if you always like these type of if you always like the enlightening academic-ish discussions. We do. That's why the show is on. And it's discussions like this that fuel us as well. So that's a Thursday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, March the 27th. I don't know who's talking there. I don't recognize the faces. We'll put the link we'll put up the link, or if you're watching this, surely you'll figure it. You can see this for yourself. Actually, having said all of that, I'll put up the in the chat. In the chat, we can put up the in the chat. I'll put up the link to the event. There you go. So you can check that out. As for everything else, well, you have any plans already for the rest of the day, James?
Not too much and stuff like that.
Well, in my case, yeah, I don't think I have too much else to add as well.
We kind of started later because I'm like, I'll set up this laptop up, no problem. It's like,
okay, so over under 4 times. That's the number of times you had to restart your new computer to make sure it was ready for this. 4 times. Yeah,
there were a few times because it brought over some of my stuff from my old computer, but I still had to install a few things and stuff like that.
So you made it sound like it. So it's a push.
So it's about 3.
It's a 3, so it's an under, but not by much.
Not much, yeah.
So there's that's it though. As for us, the stream continues this week. The streaming will continue this week. I just don't think it'll be. I'll be fortunate if it's tonight. It wouldn't be regularly scheduled. So I will be back on Monday evening, almost certainly, to continue Yakuza 2 Kiwami, and we'll probably get back to the main plot. And really, the only other thing is from our end, I'm still trying to understand how to stream properly, and probably the next couple goals is to probably put up the archives of the first dozen or so streams onto the YouTube channel, and probably clean that up just a little bit, clean up the Twitch side too, and maybe learn how to multi-stream and just make the presentation just a little nicer looking. We'll feel our way through. But there's not much else to add, right? We don't have much else to add. I think we're done. I mean, after almost 3 hours, we should be done, right?
We'll be just under 3 hours, so it all works out.
It's almost 3 hours, right? So, well, mercifully, we're at the end. So let us know what you think wherever you're watching or listening to this, either in the comments down below or animeroundtable.com. If you're seeing this on YouTube, do us a favor and give us a thumbs up. It'll greatly help us and the whole roundtable as a whole. And while you're at it, do yourself one final favor. Give us a subscribe on YouTube, a follow on Twitch, and a bookmark wherever you get your podcasts. That way, we'll definitely see you back here next time. And next time could be as early as tomorrow, or could be as early as this evening. So yeah, please do. James, good to see you. Good to see you.
No, it's a pleasure always.
Always a pleasure. Happy 19th anniversary, belatedly.
Yeah, no, of course, and stuff like that. Always a pleasure since the first time having a chat, right?
Yeah, first time in in a month that we had.
Whether it's on the microphone or off the mics.
We're busy. I know you're busy with work. I'm busy with stuff here. It's just good to have a chance to do so, right?
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
Another one in the bucket, right? So
another one in the books.
Does this help meet quota?
Long ago, we met. Well, I don't think quota is an issue right now because I consider the streams quota. I'm
trying to think. So the other thing is this our longest fireside chat, I think, ever? I want to
Without it,
say we just
I
hit
think
it.
it's a record. I think that's a personal best.
You know what that means? People are going to say, "Could you please cut it a bit?"
Yeah, but we're always uncut. We've always been in that sense. Well, no, we haven't been because try the Neil and Adam episodes from version 1.
Yeah, no, of course. Anyway, it's great
Well,
that all those who joined us, thanks for joining us, and it was a pleasure as always.
Well, aside from planning the next stream, we do have to plan a way to get Neil here.
Well, you guys said you were going to plan a kidnapping. That's what I remember hearing about.
Well, you didn't hear it from me. Maybe you did. Anyway, I'll talk to you. Well, that's all we got. We'll talk to you later. Have a good enjoy the rest of the Sunday. Oh, book him for an appointment. Book him for an appointment. Hina says, and we'll second that. Oh, hey Mo, look, Mo's there. Yes, Neil and Adam. I don't think we can get Adam, but certainly Neil. Just a thought for everybody. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
That's one for the archive. Big reunion. Yeah, big reunion. That's one for the archive. See you later. Oh, and maybe we'll figure out a way. Maybe we'll figure out a way that we can Discord audio chats into the stream. So if you want to hang out while during play, right, during the PS play, okay. Thanks for the time. Talk to you later.